be on it. And there's so many people I'm like, all right, be on it or like this.
Yeah,
and then
right.
10 minutes and they're
do
just
that.
like, oh, they're over here. They're far. I'm like,
It's like, how come I can't hear any low end of my voice?
it's you don't realize how much no one knows about
I know.
microphones and gear and sound until you go on down the path we've gone down.
Until you do live sound.
Until you do live sound, until you do audio production, until
Weddings,
you do sound design, wedding,
especially.
anything.
Weddings are great.
Oh my God.
The toast and the microphone.
I just did one Saturday.
Yeah.
And the guy had the microphone
Always.
and he's in front of the PA.
Yeah.
And he's down here. And the wedding planner
you're
is
like-
looking at me and she's like, I'm like,
I know.
he needs to go up a foot
I know.
and go like this.
Yeah.
And people it's a nerve thing.
Yeah.
You can tell people get nervous.
Because they'll do it and then they'll drop it again.
Because they hear themselves and they go, oh, shoot.
Yeah. I'm so loud.
I'm loud. I've never heard myself like
Yeah.
this. That psychological factor of like not knowing what it's like to hear yourself back because you're so used to hearing the bone induction.
Yep.
And then the sounds diffract to your ears, so you get more low end.
Yeah.
So you don't hear that nasally thing that everyone has.
We're all so nasally.
We're also nasally.
We all think we have like this sweet bass.
Because what's in front of the mic now is the nasal,
Right.
the mouth,
Yeah.
not the low frequencies diffracting.
Right. It's not rattling your bone in your head.
And when you tell someone that, they still don't get it. But once you do it enough, you start to understand. Like,
Yeah.
you always disassociate from your voice when you hear it, but I
Yep.
don't care anymore.
I don't either. You just accept it.
That's just,
Right.
It's like a different person. It's
Yeah.
weird.
It is. I still am like shocked every time I hear my voice on like a talk back. And I'm like, oh God. Like, I need to like,
Do you find yourself as an audio engineer? Well, I guess let's tell people what you do. We kind of just started going.
Oh yeah,
there.
that's true.
You maybe tell the world what you do and who you are.
I think audio engineer is a funny word in that I like to almost tell people I'm a audio producer than an engineer because I feel like even though I twiddle those knobs and everything, I like to get more involved in it instead of just engineering. I feel like I personally like that because I don't like to just sit there and put the levels up and be like, is this good? Is this good? It's like, I really like to get more involved with music. So I do like to tell them I'm a producer.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I'm an audio engineer. So
both.
by default. Yeah.
You could be
They're kind of
both.
both, right?
Yeah.
Like now, even more so. Like
These
it's very
days-
rare that like no one comes in with a producer.
Right.
So
Well, not at the level where
yeah,
we're at. Not with the money.
Well, even the level right now, like it's very rare that even like someone even on like, a pseudo famous label has a producer. They kind of just come in with their thing, and then the label is like yay or nay, or fix this or fix that or something.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So how did you find yourself coming into being an audio engineer? And you're an audio engineer at Jamdek.
Yeah. Right.
And-
Owner. It's like 4 years now.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. So we should tell it that we went to school together.
Yeah. Doug and I went to Columbia College, Chicago together. I went there from 2012 to 2014. What years did
I
you
think
go
that's
there
when I went. I don't even remember. I blocked it out.
Why'd you block it out?
I don't know. I more blacked out, I think, than blocked it out, So when people do ask me, like, when did you graduate? I'm like with my fingers in my hand, like, I don't even know. Like, it just happened. And I spun out of it. So,
yeah. It was a blur. That was a hard time.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this, but I was not an audio major, right? I was a music composition major, so taking audio classes. And so my relationship with the teachers was kind of funny in that, studying music at Columbia, they had some classes trying to teach audio production, and they were really bad at it. And then, so that's when I started taking classes at the audio department.
So they had classes in the music composition department.
Yeah.
That was trying to teach audio production.
Yeah,
because
they had
at
like
a
a
school that has one of the best ones in the world.
Totally, because it was they had a music lab.
Oh, okay.
Right. And they had all these computers with Pro Tools in them and like Ableton and stuff. And this is going to be funny, but I'm going to be very honest about this. They had 2 classes. One was called electronic composition, and it was for the music lab. So you could go there and you could make these abstract electronic pieces on them. And you had a class you had to attend every week too. Right? So like that's where like Maximus P showed up and all those things. And just learning like basic Pro Tools and stuff. And then you had another class that was literally called electronic music composition, making beats.
Oh.
Yeah. So you could like make beats. So I took both. And I learned how to make beats.
Right. How was that?
So silly. It was great. Because the teacher, she was a classically trained violinist trying to teach how to make beats. And it was
man.
actually kind of cool, but also funny because she was like
Yeah.
obsessed with like Laurie Anderson and stuff. So she did teach some like really rad stuff. And so, yeah, that's where I started with Pro Tools. I never used Pro Tools before. I grew up with Fruity Loops.
Right.
So, yeah.
I've always used Logic.
Oh, yeah.
It stuck
I've
with
never
me.
even touched Logic.
See, I'm the opposite. Like,
yeah.
I only have used Pro Tools at.
We should tell you that's like a software program.
Oh, yeah.
Because we started talking about that.
Yeah,
if you were
right.
like, what?
For those listening, Pro Tools is a recording software program or digital audio workstation. In our world, a DAW.
It's a digital tape machine, essentially.
And that's made by Avid.
Right.
And then Logic is made by Apple, and that's also a digital audio workstation.
Right.
Pro Tools is more considered to be the industry standard.
That's what they say.
That's what they say. And then I'd say right underneath that is probably Logic.
Yeah.
Popularity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always just use that because I always had Apple products.
That makes sense.
And then at Columbia, they had Pro Tools.
Yep.
And then I went to the Art Institute, and they had Pro Tools.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that you went to the Art Institute.
Yeah,
yeah.
after.
We got to
That
talk about that. I'm super curious.
That was an interesting experience.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was so different from Columbia. But
Oh,
like,
yeah.
in all the ways that I've always enjoyed music and production, as far as not so much the tried and true avenue of being an engineer and point to point, analogous information from like a microphone out of a speaker.
Yeah.
But like all the weird stuff you can do between point A and point
Totally.
B.
Yep.
Which is really fun because I never realized I was more into being more like a sound artist. I've been described by my friends as a soundsmith,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's where like branching how to properly capture information
Yep.
is what I got from Columbia.
Yeah.
And how to properly be creative and manipulate information is
So
what
that's-
I got from the Art Institute.
That's the upside of it is that, when you study it and you learn all the logistics and everything, but then you learn the other side of it, of the like compositional side, it's great because I think for me, what I've experienced when I go to a lot of museums that have like a sound art installation or maybe someone that's like learning that, I feel like they kind of went on either side, kind of to the extreme. So there's stuff conceptually is cool, but it sounds awful. And then the people that make it on the other side are like, it sounds great, but the concept is so lame. You know what I mean? And not,
know
I shouldn't
exactly
say
what you
lame,
mean.
but just kind of like, okay, yeah, all right.
I mean, it's your subjective thought.
Totally.
It could be
yeah,
lame to you. I
Not
mean,
all the time, but
that
it's
happens a
really
lot.
good to have a combination of that. And even in engineering, like working with bands, it's very good to have that. So again, kind of back to the whole thing of like, it's cool to archive a band, but I don't think that's what bands actually want right now. I don't think I think they want a little bit of like cheerleading and ideas to collaborate with. So.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not do that when either you're off to the side in a control room or behind the glass and you're hearing all this information? You're, using tools to get it balanced or manipulate things, but at the same time, you're still the fifth person, the eighth person, however many people are in the band. You're that extra person.
You're the midwife.
You're the midwife. You're something going on there that's a part of it. And I also think it's part of the mindset now where a lot of people, at least in our age group, give or take 5 years, are in a place of learning how to collaborate. A lot of them came up in a DIY world where you learn you can get further by bouncing ideas off each other.
For sure.
Collaboration. Whereas back in the day, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, I feel like the word engineer, it's such a technical word, and it came from because these guys were technicians.
Literally lab coat wearing.
You had to be an electrical engineer to learn how to actually know how to use equalizations and
okay, so this is a great example of why I struggle with calling myself an engineer because, there are things around the studio where it's like I could fix that with a soldering iron, but I'm too busy or like I could open up the schematic of this compressor or something like that and really learn that. But I kind of distance myself a little bit from it because I still want the mystery to be in there, So
well, it's like why you're an audio engineer.
Yeah.
You're not an electrical engineer. I'm not either. Or a mechanical engineer.
Yeah.
Or any other type of engineer, or a civil engineer. Like there's so many, but an audio engineer is someone who can understand how to properly capture sound.
Totally.
And have it go
true.
from a microphone, one transducer out of a speaker, and have that whole signal phone be pure, clean, proper to take what that person's doing and have it translate.
Yeah.
So like we are audio engineers.
Yeah.
Like, how could you not be one when you're engineering audio?
It's a good point.
Like, that's to simplify it. There's a lot more to it. But because
It's just really nice that, like, it's the therapy of, like, no, you're bringing it out of me.
like, yeah,
you need to identify.
You need to, yeah. It is hard. It's it's weird to give any label to anything. It's usually something other people bestow upon you.
True.
Like I was telling you in the basement before we recorded, to me, it's just my basement.
Yeah.
I literally just said in the basement instead of saying in the studio. But everyone else comes down and they go, oh, the studio. I'm like, this is my basement.
Yeah.
But they have to tell me that and I have to be like, yeah, it's a studio. I am doing this thing. I forget this. But yeah, it's audio engineer is a very fascinating one because it always ends up going into like a producer realm, especially when you have a music background, which you do.
Yeah.
You know, music composition. I have a music background, so unless you're a thumb, it's pretty innate to just be like start giving musical ideas.
Right. Because we all did this because we played in bands or whatever.
So we play music, we play in bands. Do you play in anything right now?
I'm actually now a solo act. So yeah, I was in a band and then just kind of it's really I should say this, it's when you commit to the job of being an audio engineer or producer, these labels we're gonna say, it's really hard to be in a band.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Because you know, you will spend 10 hours, 8 hours, whatever, a day working and giving your complete energy into someone's music. And for me personally, when I'm done with that, I just want to go home and just chill. Like I don't even really listen to music after that.
Have you haven't gotten your brain to hop between that spectrum of music enthusiast, musician.
Yeah.
Not even musician, music enthusiast, music writer, musician. Because sometimes, like, I'm in a band where I don't have to really write much.
Yeah.
But I'm also in bands where I do write.
Yeah.
So there's different brains there. Then a music, like an audio engineer, then you go further into someone who's like a producer, engineer. Like it's a wide spectrum. And it's different for everyone because it depends on how much you put into it.
Sure.
It took until very recent, maybe the last 2 years, for me to be able to hop between the hats and like shut off those valves.
Totally.
And be able, like tonight I will put on vinyl, listen to it, and just detach. And even being able to analyze the crap out of it, which I know you know what that feels like. All the way to just like, oh, this is nice. I like what they said there. I'm not paying attention to what mic I think is on the kick drum. Or why they equalized it that way, why it's placed in that position in the studio, you know? And do you ever make an active effort to try to do that? Or is it hard sometimes to
I think
detach?
it's always a learning process. But it's so cool we're talking about this because I think I just had the epiphany of it like literally last month. So I think that I had to really figure out what music I even wanted to do, which I know that sounds silly. But I think for me, the struggle was like I always love too much of scattered things, you know, genres, whatever. And so when it came to making music, I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to write? Because I want to do so many things. And I'm like paralyzed by the thought of even like writing something.
I love that you just said that.
And then you like bring up a guitar and you're like, well, I know a G chord. And I'm so sick of playing a G chord, you know? And I've always been a guitar player. And that's also been a little bit of a struggle because I kind of fell in love with it because the guitar is super fun, but it kind of keeps giving back a similar sound that I've heard just so many times. And this is my opinion, right? This is because when I record other people playing guitar, I'm always like, God, that sounds great. And I'm so stoked for them. And, you know, so I'm not bashing guitar players, but just for my own playing, I think that guitar became just a drag for me. So I started buying like battery powered drum machines and synthesizer samplers and stuff that I could hook into a laptop if I wanted to, but I didn't have to. And I had like strict limitations. And they're all like sounds I just never worked with before. And that has been a new thing for me, being able to work, because you just have this box and you can't, you know, you can only work with that box. And so instead of like being on a laptop, especially like Ableton, oh my God, like you start working in that and it's just a rabbit hole of just like effects and whatever, you know? But I've noticed that when I just kind of just have this controlled environment of just a couple things going into whatever, a cassette deck or something just to hear it back, I have a lot more fun. And that limitation has been super sweet because I can finally sort of like program it, I guess, in a way with these devices, you know? And then I kind of let it play out. And so that's been really fun. It's also great because these are sounds that I could not think about to make. I have to make them through discovery, right? Whereas a guitar, like I know what's going to happen. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. But I like these boxes that like I can make something, and I've never heard that sound before. And so I respond to that. And then I start writing and chopping it up inside the computer. So I'll spend a whole day just bleeping and blopping for hours, you know? And 90% of it is awful. But like 10% on a good day, there's something in there that something, you know, that I really enjoy. And that becomes an idea.
What do you play under? Do you have
no name yet?
Just
it's so new.
Under your name, Doug?
I've never done solo stuff before.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if just going under Doug would be cool.
You sing too?
I don't know yet. I do. And see, that's the thing. It's like, I don't know if I want to just make it like, this is going to get a whole thing, but I'm going through this very like thought process of like, do I even want to sing in music anymore? Like, I kind of am like stepping back behind the whole being present in a band. And I kind of like the idea of making essentially dance music. And I don't even want people to look at me. I just want to perform it. And I want people to look at each other and dance. That's where I'm at right now. So
do you think you found yourself not wanting to sing or perform when people look at you?
Yeah. It's what's so weird.
Because of like the same role of why you chose to be an audio engineer.
I think so.
Hide behind the glass and guide stuff.
Totally.
Be the transmitter for information.
I just want people to listen. I don't want people to look at me.
I'm the same way.
I just like, that's so, I don't mind doing it, but like, I think there is something very uncomfortable about it to me. Like it just really does make me, especially, you know, when you're playing a song and then you end the song and everyone claps and it gets really quiet. And then you have to be like, oh God, what am I going to say?
Do you think it's because of like your own introvert or self-conscious?
Yeah. And I'm not even like an introvert. I'm definitely an extrovert.
Yeah.
So I think it's just that I really want to force people to listen to it and not, I'm so, I can talk about this. So I'm a little tired of like the presentation of what someone looks like when they're performing, what they're dressing like, what their skin color is even, right? Like
Absolutely.
All this stuff. I kind of just want to like figure out a way to just get rid of all of that and make it again about the music and people enjoying it. And I think dance music really does that well. Like, and I think to me, that's why that genre is so appealing to me right now. Always has been, but I always thought like I would never play that or write that music. But now I'm like in a whole new phase of discovering some of this and really enjoying it, that it seems like I'm at a time in my life right now where it's like, right, all these things are building up where it's like, okay, I have to, if I'm going to write music or perform music, I have to do it on my own time. And that means not having anyone else in the band because I don't want to ruin their time, right? So I need to like make that a thing. And then I can write around that, and then performing it, it's just me, and I can kind of control all of that with these devices and stuff. So, and I think too, it kind of gets rid of the whole, okay, well, I have a new song for you guys, you know, like all that stuff. And I think maybe I've done live sound for a while. I've heard all that banter, and I've felt all that awkwardness. I've seen it all. I haven't seen it all. I've seen a lot of it. That I'm just like, God, I do not want to do that.
I can relate to you on
God bless the people that do that.
A lot more levels than I think we know.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot you extrapolate when you're present in those, because a lot of the times when you're recording a band, when you're doing live sound, I'm going to assume most of the time, if not all the time, you're probably sober.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah.
So am I. So you're really present.
Yeah.
And you're working.
Yeah.
So you're like trying to learn and figure stuff out. So you're even more locked in.
Yeah.
So you're paying attention to every detail.
Yeah.
And you're trying to make less mistakes and learn more. So you're learning a lot from that. Whereas another person is like going to that show.
Yeah.
They're drinking their beer.
Yeah.
Maybe they smoked. They're just trying to express themselves. And all those things are fine.
Yeah.
They're just trying to express themselves. So maybe they're more in that moment, not thinking about the technical stuff, not thinking about how, like they're just trying to talk. Maybe they're nervous.
Yeah.
And I am in the same category with you as far as I want it to be about the music and not about me. Like I don't get nervous if people are looking at me play or if I'm right in front of them. It doesn't bother me at all. It's I want it to be about the music,
sure,
and not about me. And that's why I do like listening to a record. You put it on, and your mind isn't going, I wonder if this is a man or a woman. I wonder if this is a person who's black or white. I wonder if this person's gay or straight. Like you don't go to any of those places. You just you listen to what it is, and once you start finding out that information, then you get into that weird world of just all this weird game and contest and measuring stuff.
Yep.
And I'm not a fan of it. But it is fascinating that you said that, because I feel the same way now after doing so much with production. I feel very detached from that performance side and that like the banter, like doing all the shows we've done here. I have the same experience with hearing people do that, and it's interesting. I don't know. I never know how to go about it. You learn so much about how sound works. And music theory, production, tone, electricity, how they all come together, that it is hard to fully detach. I always say I do, and I do, but there's always parts of it where you can't unknow it, and it gets a little tricky. It gets really hard to be, like I was once a musician, and now I have all these things weighing it down. Like sandwiching that down, and now I play in a couple bands, but I get to play what they wrote. And kind of slide in and use my musicianship to not have to think so hard about the composition.
You're putting in your texture and everything.
Adding what I do, and I just kind of stay away from it. Where I really find pleasure is doing like experimental, improvisational, like sound design, sound art.
Right. So, the reason why I think that it's very natural for someone who's like an engineer to go into that kind of music is because you know how to control it so well. So when you can like produce that music, it's inevitably going to be kind of crazy sounding, right? Like, and I think that's why
you're absolutely right.
That's why I got so like that's why I think the light bulb went off for me. And I think I was also kind of thinking, I'm like, why are so many recording engineers like so into modular synthesis? And so I'm like, well, duh, it's our literal job, like a patch bay. If you know how to run a patch bay and you know what follows what, and you know EQs and filters.
Signal flow.
It's a signal flow.
Signal flow is probably the king of it all.
Signal flow is so dope. Like I seriously go to bed.
We have to pause. wait.
It's literally all I think about, and I hate it sometimes. But like,
we are big nerds.
Yeah, I know.
You just said signal flow is dope, and
it gets me so stoked.
And I agree with you. But the best part is when you explain it to somebody, and that light bulb goes off, that snap, and they go, "Oh, like I get it." And then that like changes their life forever, and they understand. Because it's not just in audio. Like signal flow is like everywhere.
It's literally life.
It's life.
And I want a shirt that says signal flow is life.
We got to get these made. Wow, this is
It's got wires coming.
This is a good one.
I mean, truly, what's so cool is that signal flow is so cool. You like learn the basics, right? And then you learn. It's kind of like hip bone is connected to the whatever bone, and then, but when you start taking the cables and you start plugging them in backwards and incorrectly. And I tell all my interns this. It's like, just take a 50. You're not going to break anything. It's okay. Like just start plugging in things. Like you might get squelching feedback, but that might sound so cool. You know what I mean? And yes, there's a correct way to get a clean audio signal and stuff, but it's also cool to cascade preamps together or whatever. You know what I mean? Or reverse something. And so yeah, it makes total sense why you would get into like modular or synthesis, right? Especially because you start to see the crossover of like ideas and terms, especially, and you're like, oh my god, like the high pass filter on a console is like whatever, but a high pass filter on a synthesizer is like insane, And so you want to like combine those worlds a little bit, and you start to understand the logic, and then it's like, oh my god, I actually know what I'm doing in a way.
Yeah, you start to have a controlled chaos.
It's controlled chaos. That's exactly what it is.
I always call it that.
It's totally that, because you really learn that, especially when you get like resonant filters. That's where it's at for me. Where it's like, cool, but what happens when we put it through a wah pedal? It's like it's like someone could be like recording and I'm like, that's cool, but like let's put it through a wah pedal for real.
And even telling someone how to kind of make a weird analog wah pedal. Like, I've done it where I tell someone like, take your headphones. Turn them up a little louder. Make it a little uncomfortable and just go like this.
Totally.
Like that's a wah pedal.
Cup your ears.
That's all that's going on.
And then take your headphones and put them up to your speaker and hear that.
Just all that fun stuff. And for those listening who don't know what signal flow is, it probably has different definitions across different practices, but I would say for the most part, at least in audio, it's just, right now I'm speaking to this microphone. It's attached to an XLR cable, and it's going all the way to a preamp, and that preamp is now going to an analog to digital converter, which is making it to where it can be read through zeros and ones in Logic, printed on there, then that goes back out, does the same thing, the inverse, goes through, out the output.
So quickly too, right?
Yeah, very
it's
fast.
Crazy.
Very fast. The output through headphone output all the way to the headphones to our ears, and that's signal flow to get it from point A to point B, clean, clear, proper, fast, no latency, everything.
It's life.
It's fast. I mean, it's the speed of light, give or take, until it gets processed, and
Right.
even that, it's at a buffer speed of, I think this one's at 64 byte, or bit, so I think it's like 3.2 milliseconds.
Yeah.
Which is negligible for human hearing. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
tell that delay.
Yeah. Little latency is okay.
Yeah.
We all have little latency, right?
I mean, even our brains, like
Our brains, our eyes.
our action potentials.
I'm looking
I
at
believe,
you, but
are
you're
slow.
actually in the past
Oh, here
all
we
the
go.
time.
Here we go.
Signal flow.
Yeah, signal flow. Oh man.
Yeah, but I literally lay at night, like in my bed, and my girlfriend's like, "What?" She can always she always catches me. She's like, I have this like blank stare, even like mid conversation, and it's really rude. But like we could be like having dinner or something, and I'm just like thinking. She's like, "What are you thinking about?" And I'm like, "I'm so sorry. I'm thinking about signal flow."
Is she into this stuff at all?
Yes, she is, but only in a way of like entertainment. Of like when she asked me a question,
Right.
You know what I mean? Which I think is really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Absolutely.
And because like you can kind of like start talking about like, oh, like simple things even, where it's like, oh, that Prince song has a gated reverb on that snare. Isn't that sweet? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm here, all like goes, you know, and then we like have that.
Yeah. It's
that,
awesome. It's an awesome
dialogue.
feeling to share that with somebody.
Totally, because there's a lot of presence in there that you don't realize, and then we start like poking around. It's like, wow, man, production, signal flow.
Yeah, at least to have someone entertain it.
Yeah.
You know, and there's some people that what the other person's doing, they're just completely shut off
Yeah.
from it. They have no idea. But to be in the audio world, in the music world, like I've only ever met like one or two people that said they don't really care for music. I think something's wrong with them.
They're lying. So
They're either lying or
Such-
something's not right.
No, they're so lying.
But everyone is into music in
Absolutely.
some way, shape, or form, and some more than others. But to be with somebody that's really into it and to explain it to them,
Yeah.
and have them ask the questions, it's really fun because you get to mesh that world of creativity,
Totally.
production, and just like the human spirit.
Now I get it the other way because she works at the Museum of Contemporary Art, so I go there a lot with her. And then when there's a new show, it's really fun because I'm not an art history background. So when we do walk through some of these exhibits, she'll go through and like really explain things to me. Not in like a very like heady way, you know what I mean? And I love it. It's really fun. So
That is cool.
Yeah, so there's an exchange where we're both very curious about each other's jobs. And we don't know enough to even make arguments against each other. So we could both be lying to each other the entire time and be like, wow, that's so interesting.
It is cool. It's cool, right?
Yeah.
I feel the same
I don't
way.
mind it.
I feel the same way. It's fun to be with someone that like knows something you don't know.
Right.
You don't want to be with someone who knows exactly what you know.
No.
That's the worst.
Yeah, you'll totally fight about things.
Well, yeah, then you're going to have a hierarchy and weigh things against each other and
Yeah.
compete
Yeah,
naturally because you're people.
Sometimes that's good for people, but
you need to have a breaking point where it's like,
Yeah.
we need to be different.
Yeah.
You need to have opposites. So that's a great balance. That's
yeah,
cool.
it's cool balance.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I do have these blank stares several times where she's like, "Are you?" And she's kind of caught it now where like I'll be doing it, and she's like, "Okay, I need you to stop thinking about the snare drum, and I need you to take out the garbage." I've asked you 3 times. I'm so sorry. I have not moved.
That's so funny. Yeah. So while you're listening to music, say you're sitting down listening to music,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Are you analyzing? Are you listening to it as a music enthusiast? Are you listening to it as a musician? Are you listening to it as a producer? Are you listening to it as live sound? Like, because you've worn 5, 6, 10 different hats in the audio music world, as I have too. So where do you go? If you were to go home tonight and put on a record and sit down and just listen to music, where would you be?
You know, I feel like I've got it down to where it's all of them. Like it's always the production that really, perks up my ears. Especially if it's something that I just never heard before. Then I'll like really go down the rabbit hole and start Googling away. You know what I mean? Even like if we're having dinner, I gotta know. You know? Guilty of that. But yeah, I don't think I don't get too critical because I didn't work on it. If it's not stuff that I worked on,
yes,
oof.
that's the key. If you didn't touch it, it's really easy to detach.
Yeah, totally.
But if it's something anything I've worked on in the same way, I'm just like, why'd I do that? Or I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
It's cool to.
It's getting better.
It's getting better.
Yeah, I will say this past year, it's getting so much my mixing skills have gotten a lot better. Like, oh my God, mixing is so hard. It's so hard. It's the hardest thing to learn.
By far.
And I feel like I'm finally at a point where I'm like, oh, okay, I don't want to puke when I hear this now. I feel okay. Like I there's like little things I want to change, and there's always little things, but it feels good finally.
So did you start out as just like a recording engineer, like just getting good at capturing stuff, getting it into the system?
Absolutely.
And then
that's tough too, right?
That's tough too.
Because then and you can't have one without the other, nor can you learn one and then learn the other. They're very reliant on each other.
Yes.
So you have to like really understand, like, okay, to get this in a good recording, I have to then also remember that this is going to be mixed. And I think that like I don't want to separate them, because I really never want to track something and be like, okay, well, hey y'all, when we mix this, it's gonna yada yada yada. I kind of just go ahead and just do it, and it's like, this is when you leave the studio, it should actually be already like 60% there, so that when we do mix, it's no issues. It flies. We can get right into like the fun stuff, like signal flow.
yeah. I mean, to me, I have the philosophy of like a good air quotes song.
Right.
It's like this perfect triangle, where one point of the triangle, this isosceles triangle, is the musicians, the composition. Like, what did they create?
Right.
The next point is the engineering. How well did you properly capture? Because there's many art forms. What kind of mic? Was it up close? Was it off axis? Was it far away? Is there room sounds, acoustics, everything? Then there's that mixing. Mastering is, to me, is the least necessary one.
Yeah.
Personally. It's the one that's used the most. I'm sick and tired of hearing that word.
Yeah. I hate mastering. I would almost say never, because I have master stuff, but I just, no.
Yeah.
I'd rather just like leave it to like a person who does that, and that's what they do, and that's their thing. And I love that extra set of ears. So
I've only done it out of necessity, so I've gotten good at it.
Yeah.
Because I did it for like every session. Everything I've ever done here, I've mastered. So
that makes sense.
I just because. Yeah. But if someone else can do it, if I could pass it, I'm fine with it. I have no problem. Because that's the least I'm attached to. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Yep.
But I'm sick and tired of that word, because it is always just like, oh, this was remastered. Oh, how is it mastered? Everyone takes that word and they throw it on. And I'm like, you don't even know how unnecessary.
I know.
If you're sitting in a room alone and listening to a stereo, you don't need it mastered.
Yeah.
You really don't.
Yep.
All it does is crunching the numbers. It's just bringing down the dynamics. It's making it less humanistic, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because an acoustic guitar is not as loud as a drum kit.
Right.
Human voice is not as loud as 3 guitars blaring. So anyway, we can get to that. But yeah, to me, it's this triangle. The composition, musicianship, the way you capture it and the way it's mixed, create this beautiful, strong structure.
Yep.
This unbreakable structure. So if you can get that right, it's beautiful. And then mastering is just kind of like glitter across the whole thing.
Yeah.
But
it's the Sara Lee packaging.
Yeah, it's the Sara Lee packaging. When one of those angles isn't correct, the whole thing can fall apart.
It can, And you have to work within your so many things, budget and time, and which that's obvious, but yeah, that can influence that triangle. You know what I mean? So especially if you're mixing something you did not track and you hear it and you're like, oh boy.
Yeah. Or you're tracking something and then you did it kind of poorly and you send it off and they have to mix and like, oh, like, well, what about this, and that? Or wasn't labeled right? Or like, what's this?
Right.
I just hear like, is this a room mic? Like, what is that? There's so many factors. And even what the band wants, like trying to communicate with someone who's a musician but doesn't have the technical verbiage, the knowledge, that experience. And some of my best recordings have been with people like that, and some of my worst ones have been people like that, because they didn't know how to even properly convey what they wanted.
That's always the trick. That's the hardest part of this of all of this is our communication. Yeah. I'm really starting to like figure out what the best route for that is, and I learned the term recently, mood board, which I guess has been around forever. I just kind of learned in the business world. You make a mood board, you make a deck. Right. And people will actually, before they go into a presentation, they'll put these images and anything that like just gives a picture of the idea, the vibe of what their concept is. And I think that's exactly what needs to happen, like a sonic mood board, right? So anytime anyone ever comes into the studio, I just ask for 2 things is some kind of demo, a cell phone demo. It does not matter, because you would not believe, even if it's recorded so poorly, I can still get the emotion out of it. And I understand what they're trying to do. And so that's really important. I can just feel that out, the vibe of it. It could even be on a cell phone, blasting rock, but it does not matter.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just some kind of like playlist or a poem, even something that's just like here. Or I've even, sometimes I get the concept of like some bands will have a record cover already picked out. And I will print that out and just like sit it on the console. And it's like, this is a reminder of the vibe of this record.
Mm-hmm.
So as we're like doing things, it's like, that's not that vibe. This is the vibe, So vibe is such a silly word, but that's really what it is.
It is. It sets the tone. It sets the mood.
Yeah. Because I really want to I really am obsessed about getting in their head. I'm like, how are you hearing this? Like, what is your like ultimate sound in your noggin that's going on up there? Because you a lot of people have that vision in their head already. And I just need to like get in there and like, look at them for like an hour before we even record. I just stare at them.
Stare.
Yeah.
Our first consultation is just me staring at you.
Yeah. You don't talk.
Yeah. That can happen then. It can happen along the process.
Yeah.
Asking the right questions without them even knowing.
Questions.
You're just kind of like, so what are you doing there? What are you going for here?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? Or
Yep.
Where was this written? Like, tell me the story behind. Oh, I was listening to the lyrics. What's going on with that? Even if it's a scratch vocal,
Yep.
what's that about? That's pretty heavy. And that can help come up with an idea.
And it helps so much, not even with like the idea, but like, especially at drums, right? I like to talk to bands about how like the tone of your kick and snare will like identify what you're trying to do of any decade, your sound, right? It's not even the vocal, it's the freaking kick and snare drum. It tells you everything. It tells you like, are you making a Motown record? Are you making a metal record? Are you making whatever? It's all about the freaking kick drum. It's wild.
Yeah.
But I'm like very obsessed with that idea. And so drums is kind of like where it starts for me. It has to be right.
Yeah.
Like recorded.
That's the foundation.
It has to be. So yeah, when drums come in and when people start setting up drums to track, it's all about like tuning them and, making sure that they just sound so good. That way when we record, they hear it back and it's like, wow, like I'm so glad we took that time to do that.
Do you have a mic drum preference for kick drum?
Not at all. I switch it every session.
That's awesome. What do you tend to go between?
Well, if it's a more of vintage sound, I definitely use an AKG D25, which is like the next step up from the D12. It's got this really cool yoke and everything, which makes it actually really hard to get into a kick drum hole, but that's okay.
Yeah, they make their mics too big for that.
Yeah, but they sound great. And there's like a really cool mid-range thing that happens with it. And then, if it's more of like a modern thing, then I'll start going into like, the D112s or the whatever that, M88. Yeah, sometimes that's, or 421. I do not have a, I will say this is my own responsibility and I feel kind of bad about it, but sometimes people will rent out my studio and I'll actually like get in there early to like show them around and make sure they're all good to go. Sometimes a lot of engineers will show up there early, like an hour early, and set up microphones and before the banding gets there, and that's really good and responsible. I'd never do that because I've just learned that if I'd never worked with this drummer or even know what their drum kit they're bringing in, I literally need to hear how they're playing it.
Yeah.
Before, because you remember in school, remember they used to tell you like, you need to like email the drummer and ask what kind of kit they have and all that stuff. No, absolutely not. Don't do any of that. You literally do not know until you hear them actually playing it.
Yeah.
That's when I know my microphones.
Interesting.
And because I know, one, the big caveat, right? What cymbals are they using? Yeah.
Yeah, that gives away a lot of information.
Yes.
How many toms? What are the sizes of them? What are the dimensions?
And like, and even that, like, we all know what that sound, but it really differs, like how the actual drummer is playing them.
Yeah, their dynamics.
Their dynamics.
Their taste, what they go for.
Yeah, because one, like, I could have two different drummers and they both have Ludwig kits, completely different sounds, So I really do not setting up mics until I'm sitting in the room just hearing the drummer play, which I know maybe is not a hot take, but
it's the way you work, though.
I just have to hear them.
It's how it works for you.
Yeah.
And that's the best part about this type of endeavor, this job, is it still is a very creative one.
Yeah.
Where it has a very technical application, but how it's applied is very creative and what you do with it. So like your method is different from mine. I even have a different way of doing things because most bands do live sessions here.
Yeah. Oh,
and,
right.
Instead of albums. I do albums, but it's not as often.
Yeah.
So I have everything kind of set up to fit the video. So
For sure.
It's always the same mics.
Yep.
So the continuity is very much the same.
That makes sense.
So it's different.
Absolutely.
So, but I have, even across the continuity, it actually has given me because it's all neutral.
Yeah.
It's given me a great idea of how different things are. Because
Yep.
I always have the same foundation.
Yeah.
And I could see like, wow, like the 421 sounded this way on that tom. It's the same rack tom, 14 inches on a Gretsch Catalina.
Different player though.
But then the player, it sounds like a completely different thing. Then they have different bleed from that cymbal because they're using a Istanbul and it's just a little bit more dry than this Ping Ride. And you're just like, huh, that's fascinating.
That's an amazing, like, kind of a litmus test.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never even thought about that.
Even just the 609 on a twin reverb, the guitar, the player into a guitar, his signal flow again, into their pedals, into the way they have, the knobs twisted on it, what they do, that all changes the same $100 microphone.
Yeah.
And it just sounds completely different every time.
Man, I really do think that this is like going to be kind of bad for me to say, but I kind of like struggle with owning a recording studio because when you get into like the gear world, I tell bands this all the time. I'm like, I actually really do feel like you could use $100 mics, and if the band is good, it's going to sound so dope.
Mm-hmm.
They just do,
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, kind of like with the drummer thing, having them come in before the band, setting it up, and then that's where the production starts.
Mm-hmm.
It's super important because, one, does the drummer actually know what sound we're going for? Because sometimes the songwriter has this idea and they've communicated to me, but they have not told the drummer. And I'm like, oh, we're doing this kind of sound. They're like, oh. I'm like, we better swap something, or like, we need to talk about this, right? Or better yet, maybe like the sound that you're all going for, the drummer might not realize that you actually have to use a different kind of drum to get that sound, right? Especially snare drums. That's a tricky one. Yeah, it's very tricky.
Snare is a very tricky one.
Like if someone's like, I want to do a Bonham sound, I'm like, yeah, bro, but you have a piccolo snare.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about
a lot.
this.
I want a fat, thick snare. I'm like, your snare is not a fat, thick snare.
And you did not tune it at all.
Yeah, maybe. And sometimes like they're going for a sound like you have a metal snare, you want a wooden one.
Yep.
You want a wooden rim.
Better yet, how they hit the snare, right? And so, if I can like tell anybody who is like, I'm an up and coming recording engineer, what should I learn? I would be like, learn how to tune drums, and just learn everything about drums. Like, basically become a drummer. If you don't become a drummer, that's okay. But like, really learn the acoustics of them. Like you said, the sizes.
Learn everything about them.
Learn everything about them.
All the dimensions,
like
the history of them,
cymbals
players,
too.
Cymbals,
because that's where it all starts. I'm not joking. When you like really get a good drum sound and the cymbal, like good cymbals are appropriate for your tracking, your mixing is so easy because you're not fixing anything.
Yeah,
right.
That's a great point.
It's like it's all where it starts.
You can't polish the turd.
You just can't. And you can't make a crappy drum recording sound good. It's just
you can't.
You just can't.
Fix it in post should never be said again.
Yeah.
I do not like that.
And it all starts with that. It's like, it's not only that, it's like learn about drum beaters, different types of drum beaters, different heads, different plies of heads. It's, even though I suck at drums, I'm so bad at drums, but I'm so obsessed with them. They're like, to the point when I talk to drummers and they come in, I'm like, how long have you been drumming for? I'm like, I've never been a drummer.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And I'm
Why
like,
do you know
I just
so
have to
much?
learn this because I can't trust any of you.
No, yeah. Oh my God.
Joking, obviously.
No, you're hitting
the
the nail on
drummers
the
that
head.
come in that know that stuff, that know how to tune it, it's like, God, we just saved 3 hours of the session.
And it's going to sound so much better.
It's so much better.
Yeah, like, I can't say it enough. Your job as an audio engineer is just to take information and make it sound just as good, if not better, on the other end. But if that signal flow is disrupted by bad input, such as it's out of tune, the dynamics are weird.
It's literally garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, you can only do so much.
And I'll tell you the worst feeling, if I can just be like completely honest, is like when you're in the studio and you just like took out a loan for this like super sick mic, like you spent too much money on it maybe, or you're like, oh my God, it's like $5,000.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, what am I doing?
You get a U87, U47,
anything like that. And then you like set it up in the band that you have recorded and they're just, that whole problematic situation. And you're just like sobbing. So like, spent so much money.
That's why I don't buy those mics. I stopped.
But then you have a really good something, a singer or whatever, and you hear it and you're like, oh yes,
yeah,
I can hear it now.
Yeah.
So it's a give and take situation. But back into it again. Your job as a recording engineer is you are a problem solver. That's all you are.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's where it all starts. Where it's like, okay, like why are you doing rim shots? You don't have to do rim shots. It's okay. Just hit the snare. I know maybe you do that live, and I have this conversation too where that's why I love getting bands I've never been in a studio before, because I feel like it's a really good practice. Because not only do you have to practice your instrument, you have to practice in your band, you have to practice for your live show, you also have to practice recording. It's totally different, especially for drummers, where it's like, yeah, man, you hit those cymbals really hard. You actually don't have to hit them that hard because they are heightened, And so you start to have that conversation. Like they just really like they don't know because they don't have experience. So I do the second record with them. They're totally new band, and they sound so good. And it's like it's just a practice.
That could explain like why so many bands like sophomore records kind of like exceed the first one.
Yeah, they learn.
They learn a lot.
And also, what's really cool is that you were talking about this when you were recording somebody, and you actually are explaining to the band what you're doing. That's super important because one, you feel like you're present together and you're working out together. It's not just you. Because you don't want the band just like looking over your shoulder, like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I love to explain everything. Give out all my secrets. I don't have any secrets.
Yeah.
I'm just telling everything. Even if they're like, okay, cool, Doug, stop talking about signal flow.
Yeah.
But it's great to like let them, because what happens when they come back in, I actually feel like that influences their songwriting. Because they want, some bands will be like, we want a really bass heavy record. And we'll have that conversation about like, well, if your songs are actually more mid-tempo and they're more tom-based instead of cymbal, you can make it sound so heavy. And that will actually like influence their songwriting for the next record, or their ideas.
Yeah.
Or they actually kind of be like, I want to make this record really dark and everything, and that will inform them. You know what I mean? So it's really cool to keep talking about that.
Yeah. And you get better at it.
You do.
I've gotten much better. You also get better, and you can really just like talking to musicians off that ledge.
Yep. Off that ledge.
They want to jump off some ledges sometimes,
sure.
and you just kind of like, it's okay.
Yep.
Like, no one likes their voice. No one likes their guitar lick. It's an egocentric thing.
Yep.
Every musician and what they do, they don't like it.
Yep.
The bass will be like, oh, that drum was cool. And then the drummer's like, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
The drummer goes like, oh, that guitar line was cool. And I don't like the tone.
Yep.
Guitar player goes, oh, like that take was great on your vocals there. I don't really like. No one likes what they do.
Right.
Ever.
Yep.
Especially when it's something creative. It's so personal.
Yep.
It's a dark place you have to learn to get past. It's where the classic line of art is never finished. It's abandoned comes from.
Truly. And at the same time in artwork, you have to realize that like audio is not sacred. It's really important to record it well, but when it gets to that mixing thing, all bets are off. I'm like blasting stuff. You know what I mean? Like, especially, that's where I love mixing. It's like, it's just not sacred. You have all right to just completely twist it and turn it upside down, whatever. But as long as it's recorded cleanly, you start there at least.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
When did you start mixing more? Like, you started getting into capturing sound.
Yeah.
And then when did you start making that branch? Like, I'm gonna start putting it together, blending it.
I think I feel like as an actual mixer, it probably happened like 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, where I really started like appreciating that work.
Would you just pass it along to someone else? Previous?
Probably not. No, I think I actually did it, but I was always just like upset about it.
Yeah.
You know? Just like,
well, that's how you start.
I know.
Right?
It's just so like,
it's hard to listen to some old stuff.
It's like a gut punch, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will admit the first couple of records I did, but that's the whole process, right? Is that you record your band for free or whatever, you know, because you're just starting out.
Yeah.
And that band knows that they are also getting a service for free. And maybe that band is like beginner too.
Yeah.
Right. So you're kind of all just like figuring it out.
Yeah.
So maybe it doesn't sound the best, but you're all having a good ass time.
Yeah, it's fun.
You know?
And those are the most memorable moments of my life.
They are.
Those $200 records.
Yep. $200 records. Totally.
$300 records. And you work 100 hours. You're like, I made $3 an hour. But you're in it together.
Yep.
You're figuring it out. You're having fun. You're staying the night.
Yep.
You're having conversations, talking about the future of it.
That's where I got really lucky, is that when I met you at Columbia, I was already an intern at what was called Minball at the time. So, and the exchange was, I would show up there, oh man, I think like 3 or 4 times a morning. I would get there at like 6 a.m., clean everything, do my homework. And then the owner, Benjamin, would show up, and then he'd have a session, I'd help him in the morning, then I'd go to school, and then after school, I'll go back there and assist his sessions, or on the weekends, whatever. And then, but any free day open, I could bring in any band I wanted to for free. So it was awesome because I could bring them in the studio and essentially try things out, And that was like the conversation where it's like, hey, I want to record your band, but here's the deal. I'm new to this, so it's going to sound wild.
Yeah.
Right? And
wild's a good way of saying it.
And we're going to like collaborate and we're going to get it there, but like, let me do this. And then you also do give me your wild ideas. And so it kind of can be in this really fun thing. Like, it's kind of fun to go in there and like all bets are off and you just recording your friends, And
what was the first record you did?
Gosh, I don't even remember. I really don't. I think there was this. I do remember the first thing I ever recorded at the studio, and it was my friend Dave Brown, and he was like a singer-songwriter guy, and yeah, I made like $50, but it was fun. Like, we essentially like just recorded his songs and went around the studio and like, let's add this, and he got like super drunk.
How old were you?
Probably, I think that was, I had to have been like 25.
25, okay.
26, something like that. So.
And what were you doing before that, before 25?
Just playing in bands.
Playing in bands, okay.
Yeah.
Are you from Chicago?
No, I'm from Central Illinois. I grew up on a farm.
We're at in Central Illinois.
So this is like kind of near Peoria.
Okay.
Do you know Knox College in Galesburg? You ever heard of that liberal arts college?
No.
So yeah, 3 hours south of here, I grew up on a super tiny farm in the middle of nowhere.
That's awesome.
It was crazy.
Explains a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk a lot because I just like, I had...
People? I see people.
I was literally growing up in a farm. And my parents were like so obsessed with work that they didn't really let me like hang out with friends too much. So like I was just talking to animals. There's animals everywhere. So
yeah.
I grew up on a zoo. So I think having pets and stuff and...
What kind of animals?
Like cattle, pigs, chickens, rabbits, turkeys.
Does that give you a different dynamic with meat and animals?
Sometimes, the only thing I will say that a lot of the meat actually comes from my parents' farm. So like the actual meat.
Oh, okay.
So I do eat that, and I feel okay about it.
Oh, that's
because
interesting.
it's the actual pig that came from my parents' farm.
Yeah.
Or, they have a friend that does all that for them.
Okay.
A butcher, and they take care of all that. So.
Did you eat them when you were younger too? Was that weird to like see them grow up and then you eat them?
That was heartbreaking at first as a kid, know, and there's
Whoa.
almost like the blow of it is like intense. You know what I mean? Especially when like it was your best friend and you find out and they don't tell you. But my dad just being so
dark,
awfully bad at communicating. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're."
Was he a born and raised a farmer too?
Yeah, totally.
Was his dad too?
Yep.
Okay, so he's used to it.
Great grandpa. Yeah, it's
just kind of like, yeah, you eat your cattle, like that's what's here.
And and that's where it gets a little funky, right? Where it's like there's an argument to be made about self-sustainable farms. Like they are actually growing their vegetables in the garden, and they're actually eating the meat from their farm, and that's the way you're supposed to do it. Or that to their eyes, that's how you're supposed to do it. So yeah, it's a little bit more ethical in my mind in that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I do eat way less meat than I used to, that's for sure.
Me too.
But yeah, when I go back and visit my parents and, it's a total carnivore stick.
I'm sure
thing.
it's delicious.
It is so good.
I mean, it's like the best type of stuff you can get.
Yeah, totally. And I still eat, all the eggs come from my parents' farm too.
That's cool.
So I do get loaded up with that every time I go back. So
I do
and then we
get
have a
eggs
bee
from a
farm
friend
out there,
too.
so I have honey. And
Oh,
stuff
really?
Too. Yeah, so it's nice. Like that is a part of me that I will never let go.
Yeah,
for sure. The identity. So,
I remember finding out recently. Well, it makes sense, but it doesn't to me.
Yeah.
Like that honey is not vegan,
right?
And I'm just like, but they just make it for you, and then they leave.
Yeah,
and then you can just go grab it. And eat it.
Yeah,
and it's just natural. Like I don't.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
It is an animal. Are bees animals? I don't know.
I'm cool. Totally cool. I'm trying to like figure out how to get more towards like a plant-based diet.
Yeah.
But yeah, vegan, that's just too much work for me, honestly. Not to be a cop out about it, but.
No, I think you should have a good balance. I eat so much less meat. I mean, I grew up eating it a lot. And the last couple of years was, twice a day eating it. Now I've gotten it to probably 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
maybe
Same.
twice a week.
Yep.
Not a lot.
Yep.
It's usually like a weekend.
Yep.
And
Totally
it's
weekend.
going to be like a Alaskan salmon or something.
Totally.
You know, I usually only have steak like once every couple of weeks now. I used to have it all the time. So there's so many avenues. If you just you got to do your homework. You have to educate yourself. It takes time.
It does.
And it's not necessarily more expensive. I've been saving money by not getting meat.
That's the biggest thing is you kind of have to learn the like ways of keeping it in your budget.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that means like where do you shop? Where do you know what I mean? So
there's a lot of protein supplements or protein substitutes that are plant-based that you can combine a bunch together and it's cheaper than a steak.
Yeah.
Cheaper than wild Alaskan salmon. That stuff's not cheap at all.
Yep.
Shrimp, these things are not, they're very expensive.
Yep.
So I have been saving like $30-$40 a week by not eating all this meat.
Totally.
And still having great benefits. And now when I do have it, it's so much better.
Yeah.
I appreciate it more. I actually like appreciate that animal and everything when I do eat it less, you know, it's just better. And I've learned a lot more about eating like plant-based stuff, vegetarianism, veganism. Not fully. I'll probably never be a full-on vegan.
Yeah.
But I would like to get it, you know, from a better source.
For sure.
It's hard.
That makes total sense. And I think I have to credit that. My girlfriend Melissa's she's like 99% vegetarian, you know?
Yeah.
But we also like, you know, eat some fish once in a while. But she's a really good cook. And I will be completely honest, I hated cooking. It did not do a thing for me. I never got interested into it. You know, my mom's cooking growing up was like, okay, you know, sort of like fine. And and then, you know, and this like idea of like it needs to have meat in it to be a focus of like a good dinner or something silly, you know? And then she has really blown my mind as far as like, you know, different salads, different pastas and everything. And that I really learned a lot to So
it's cool.
She's
right?
like teaching me simple things, or even just how to chop a damn onion, you know, properly.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's so weird to like admit that.
But if you're not taught it, you're not taught it. If you didn't
not
learn,
taught
you didn't
it-
learn. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. And I think there's also like a good side to that. We can kind of get into this is that like when you get a little older, you start to learn that there are some things you have to keep this like work-life balance in check, where it's like, you know, working really hard, but also making sure you get home at a good time to give yourself time to learn how to cook and to actually cook and not just
enjoy
like
that food.
and enjoy it
Instead of like, I got to scarf it down because I have to keep working.
exactly, or like feel like you need to go through the drive-through or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's a really slippery slope because you know I catch myself sitting in a chair for many hours sometimes, and if you just keep up that habit, I just felt bad inside.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it was like, oof, like I've been like staring at this computer for a while mixing or something, and I'm like, ew, I just don't feel good.
Yeah.
So
You got to get out.
got to get out, and you know that's one thing that I think the shutdown really kind of brought to me was that it's so good to make sure that you are giving yourself time to actually prep a meal and eat it, and not like you said, not just scarfing it down.
Prep it,
So,
eat it, take care of it.
leftovers
fresh
are
stuff.
key. Make sure you got some solid leftover, you know, containers.
That's funny. I never have leftovers. I make what
Really?
I eat. I eat it, and I'm done. And then I make every meal fresh. So it's
I
like
love leftovers.
I never do leftovers. I have like PTSD. It just reminds me of my mom and dad. Just like, well, we're gonna have this stew for the next week, and you're just like,
But there's some things like a curry that's been sitting in the fridge for a while. You're like, oh yeah, this like went up a
I
level.
guess it depends on what it is.
Yeah, that's
because if
true.
you're making like some type of Asian dish that has like a curry like that, or something, you make a lot of it, and you just keep using it with different combinations of vegetables and rice. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the vegan, vegetarian lifestyle and dish making is a very new thing to me. So someone I'm seeing is pretty much like that, and she is a cook just like what you were saying. So she makes a lot of that stuff, and it's been awesome. Learned a lot. I've had flavors, mostly Asian stuff I've never had before.
Same.
I'm just like, whoa, what is this?
Absolutely.
It's cool. It's fun.
Yep.
And it's an activity, just like sitting down and talking is an activity. Sitting down and listening to music is an activity. But now you can listen to music, talk, make food, share together, and it's all like one. It's like what makes life worth living.
And it really
It's
helps
so
your
simple.
relationship out too.
Yeah, it does.
It's pretty
makes you connect a
key.
little bit.
Yeah.
I'd say a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this like bougie thing. It's just
No.
that like you're just present and just having a conversation.
Well, it's an active effort. Like you chop that, I chop that, we put it together. It's something you made. Again, always the glue to it is you got music playing.
Yeah.
Like who?
Wine also helps too.
Wine is always a part of it. Wine is, I mean, I've always loved wine, but
Same.
a glass or two with a meal,
Great. Totally. It doesn't have to be expensive wine. I'm a cheap date.
$10.
Honestly. Exactly.
$5. I don't even know. I am such a bad gauge of wine. I don't know anything about it.
Same.
It's called Pinot. Yeah, I'll take that.
I downloaded an app too that like you kind of just take a picture of it and it tells you if it's good or not. And I'm like, this is great.
It's the Who's Barometer. Like
it's like tons of people. It's like a Yelp for wine.
Oh, I see.
Right, and they all like submit their little star rating.
I can't imagine what that's like.
Just don't read the comments.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
just look right at the star.
Well,
rating.
the oaky afterbirth.
Exactly. It's great. But you know what's really funny is that we can poke fun at those people tasting wine, but like that to me is no different than being like, yeah, I want my album to sound adjectives.
That's why I'm being facetious because I just do it with coffee. Right?
Oh yeah, totally.
You saw me making a pour over V60. My second one of the day. It was only 10 a.m.
Yeah,
it's like I get it. I'm just being goofy because at the end of the day, I love wine. I love like this cilantro mixed with this onion and that spice. Like it's whatever's relative to what you prefer.
Totally.
And the same thing with music. I can be very anal about the sound system, where it's placed, the equalization of it based on the acoustics of the room. Where someone else is like, oh, let's just put that app together. We all plug our phones in and just do that thing. And I'm just like, oh my God. So it really is relative to you, and that's important to remember instead of judging or labeling people.
Right.
Just be like, oh, that's just their thing.
It's just their thing.
As long as you're nice about it.
Just modest. Keep
nice.
modest. Yeah.
That's all that matters. I don't really care what you're into, what you do, as long as you're just not overbearing and pushing it.
Yeah.
That's a big problem with the veganism is the pushing of anything. So why are you pushing? Like, it's a process.
Yep.
Because it hasn't been pushed on me, like she didn't push it on me. She was like, I don't care if you eat meat.
Yeah.
It made it easier. Like, oh,
exactly.
I could just take my time with this transition of just eating less meat and not feeling like under this weird microscope of like, oh, I can't eat meat around you.
It's also just communicating. It's like, okay, we can both exist, but here's what I need from you. And here's what I need you to do so we can work on this together.
Absolutely.
To like, maybe like, keep your stuff over there and I'll keep my, whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Whatever works. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, totally. But kind of getting to that point about, especially with recording, the modesty of it is really important because we were talking about like, learning how to mix and all that stuff. I think you can be a really good mixer, awesome, but you have to also be super patient in that, if somebody has an idea and they're like, we want to try this out, you can't sit there and be like, that's stupid. You know what I mean? You'll never say that. You just got to try it.
You can think it.
Yeah, you can think it. For sure. That's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I'll just say it out loud. I'm so sorry.
I have had times where someone's idea was so bad. I'm just like, you'll know this one. The classic, like, trying to make things stereo.
Yeah.
By, like, doubling and shifting.
Yeah.
Pretty much making it out of phase.
Yeah.
And that's like 101. You learned that a long time ago.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that's not how you do it.
Yeah.
We can try other things. We tried different delays, but you're never going to get it in stereo unless you recorded it in stereo with a stereo pedal and the two amplifiers, mic them, pan them hard left, hard right.
Yeah.
And it's just stuff like that where you're like, you got to find ways of like, I could figure something out. And you sometimes you even just like do a white lie.
Yeah.
Like, I did that. And you do it and they're like, oh, cool. And really you just put like a plug-in that's like a stereo delay.
Sure.
And it's just like slightly delayed by, 30 milliseconds.
Yep.
It just widens it a little bit. And that's all you can really do. But then there is times when I've learned to check myself when the idea, it's not really a bad one. It's just different from what I thought.
Yeah.
So I have to go like, okay, let's try it.
Yep.
And you try it and then it sounds better or it sounds worse or it sounds just different enough to where that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
But sometimes my favorite is when ideas like probably not a good one. It's probably not going to work. So you entertain it knowing that they're not going to like it, and then you get to just prove yourself right without saying anything.
That's great.
Yeah, let's try it. And then you do it, and they're like, oh, never mind. Like, in your head, you go, yeah, that's what I thought.
You have to, because if that person is sitting there afterwards and just like, they don't feel heard. You know what I mean? And they also like, they just have a big question mark. It's like, I know I want to try that, and they didn't do that. You know what I mean? I don't want that weirdness to happen. I
just
want
them to leave happy.
But there are so many times that I've had that suggestion and tried it, and I was like, oh, that was a great idea. Totally surprised.
Absolutely.
And being willing to admit that, right? Just get your ego out of there and just like really listen to him. Like, oh, that's awesome.
But that's why you're here now.
Right.
Like if you weren't doing that stuff, you wouldn't continue to be successful in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because people would stop, they wouldn't talk about you. The person wouldn't send another person your way.
Right.
How many bands come through referrals from other people?
It's all of it.
Most of it.
Yeah.
I'd say for me at this point, it's 97%.
Absolutely.
It's when I try to get like a band I really want to work with or someone to come in for a session, I'll reach out to them. But most of the time, it's just people coming in. Yeah. Oh, I saw this. I heard about that. I saw this on Instagram. That's just how it works.
You just get you get it. They are your business card. They're vouching for you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
So you have to be cool about it. You have to be open.
Yeah. And I think that was a funny thing about the studio too, is that, going to a lot of shows in Chicago, especially like basement shows and stuff, there is that culture of like, we want to keep it raw and punk and, in a basement and that energy. And then when I took over the studio, I think it was like scary for a lot of bands because they're like, oh, but this is like a legit studio, And I'm like, yeah, but it's like, it's DIY as it gets, baby. I'm the only person here. You know what I mean? It's just you and me, and it's like, don't be fooled by like all of this. It's going to sound great.
Yeah.
And so I think once I was able to start recording some of my favorite bands that, mostly play these these basement shows, that circuit, DIY, whatever you want to call it.
A lot of bands you've recorded, I've worked with too. Here.
They've got to like get that trust out of you first. And then once you kind of like get through that, then, all bets are off. It's great. It's super cool. So
yeah, your studio is kind of like in this middle ground.
It is in the middle ground. Yep.
Yeah. It's not as DIY as that basement.
Yeah. But it's also not super slick like CRC or something.
Yeah, I've been in other places where I'm like, this is awkward for me.
Yeah, this studio has a vibe for sure.
Oh yeah, I like it.
It's like a living room almost.
It really is.
Yeah.
How did you come about finding your way there?
So I had a musicology professor at Columbia. His name's Nate Bauckham, and I became really close with him and really started having these like conversations with him in his office, actually, like not even in class, just where I was like, I don't know, like here I am in college doing music composition, and I was like, I just don't see myself being a college, like a professor for composition. I respect that. I didn't feel like it was like my thing, And I'm like, oh no, I feel like I might have made the wrong decision, And he was like, asking me like, well, what do you want to do, And I always told him, I was like, I just love making music with people and producing, essentially is what I was talking about. I didn't really know that was like the term for it.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, my best friend, Benjamin, he also studied music composition, but he owns a recording studio. And you should just talk to him about this because you guys have very similar backgrounds and he might be able to give you some kind of information to like, exhaust your fears, so to speak. So I did email him and I met up with them in the studio. I'd never been there before. And we chatted for like 4 hours just about life, about music, about like, philosophical ideas in life with music, So he's like, you should totally intern here. I was like, okay, great. So me and a couple of, like this guy named Norman, we were kind of the first interns there. It was awesome. He gave me free reign. He's just like, same thing. He just gave me a 57. Was like, just plug in anything. You're not going to break anything.
This is that Jamdek.
Yeah, it used to be called Minball.
Right.
And I met so many bands through just that work of just assisting so many sessions. And what's so key about this is that it was not just his sessions. I assisted everyone's sessions. So many different engineers. So I saw how their process was, and I learned what to do and I learned what not to do.
Yeah.
How not to talk to people.
Yeah.
And I really learned how to talk to people. And I learned just like so many different ways to mic things. And I would hear it. And so I got to take every little bit of my favorite pieces of their work and combine it into my own. And I love that about that experience.
It's wise. So it's wise to learn from other people.
And you connect with those engineers, and you become friends with them. And then that's where it starts, where it's like, okay, they're getting busy and they'll start throwing you work. Because they're like, well, I met this weirdo Doug who is telling me he wants to record music like this. And I feel like he might know what he's doing. Probably not. But here's a band that's also new. You should go work with him, or and that's kind of where it started. And I was also doing live sound.
Yeah,
like
I've seen you at I don't remember what venues.
Empty Bottle for sure.
Empty Bottle for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, you might have done sound for one of my bands.
I think so. Yep.
Right.
Totally. Yeah.
Was it?
It was years
Wilshire
ago.
At the Empty Bottle.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
March 2013.
How do you remember that? That's impressive.
Problem.
Man, that's so good. I wish I had that kernel of that memory.
It's a problem because when your memory's like that, then everything becomes...
No, it's not a problem. It's great.
It becomes more, you put more value to it than anybody else. Yeah. And no one cares about dates and times the way that a memory like mine is. I don't even know what you call it, but it's a problem sometimes because it can make me very anxious.
Oh, I
when
see,
I'm
I see.
well, why don't you remember that?
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like everything is significant.
I'm so bad about that.
And to everyone else, it feels like nothing is significant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, Yeah, I do remember.
Information overload.
Yeah. Yeah, the date thing.
But yeah, live sound actually helped that, right?
Yeah.
If you're like into live sound, I met a lot of bands too, and I would like talk to them afterwards, and just blatantly be like, hey, I really like your band a lot, and then maybe not pop the question there. Maybe you can if you're busy or not busy, I'm sorry, but maybe go see them again and be like, hey, remember I did live sound for your show? I am an intern at the studio. I can record you for free. Have you recorded anything yet? No, cool. Let's just try this out. If it doesn't work, cool. Nothing happened where no one was hurt. You didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it started. So.
Okay. So you did live sound for a lot around Chicago.
Yeah. I also have to debunk this whole idea of like, because I've heard this before. And since we're talking about this, it's really important to get it out there. This whole idea of like, I'm a recording engineer. I've never had to do live sound. Dude, no. No. Do live sound.
I love it. I did it on Saturday. I did it at a wedding. Someone's like, you want to meet? I was like, sure.
But like, there's this weird pompous idea of some recording engineers I meet where they're like, oh yeah, I've never had to dupe down to being a live sound engineer.
I think they're both important.
They are super important, but they also doing live sound has made me so fast as a recording engineer, so fast. And I learned so much. So my boss at the bottle was a boss at the bottle, boss at the empty bottle, I should say, Elliot Dix, amazing person. One of the best human beings I've ever met in my life. Like so influential.
Was he a live sound engineer too?
Oh yeah.
Cool.
And he tours with like, he's the main touring front of house for like Tortoise.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of really big bands. And his like ideas of workflow and signal flow and everything is so punk. It's beautiful. So he kind of like sets you up in these situations where you're like, putting in these chords and he's like, oh yeah, I rewired them myself so they don't work how he gives you so many variables that you have to really know your stuff to like make it work. And it's like covered in duct tape, but it's awesome because you really learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And you don't get this like nice, everything's working, everything's clean and labeled. It's just not like that.
That's cool.
And it's not like that in the real world.
No, it's not.
So
no, it's not. Like doing DZ Fest has taught me that. Like like knowing everything inside and out. It's not as pure and clean as you think. Like the facade is that it is. When people show up, they're like, oh, this is so well done and sleek. It's like, you don't understand.
And that whole learning curve is so important because when you're recording a band, right, and you're setting up and blah, 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 and you're just like, oh my God, channel 10 is not working. It's okay. Because there's 24 channels.
Yeah,
you just use 11
and then after the show or tomorrow, figure it out.
It's
probably a bad connection.
Or maybe it's probably something it's a button.
Yeah, you missed it.
It's no big deal.
It happens all the time.
Yeah, it's really no big deal. And as a studio owner, I have freelance engineers come in there all the time. Sometimes they'll call me freaking out, and I'm like, "Hey, it's okay. It's no big deal. You know what I mean? Just use the next XLR.
Yeah.
Just use the next patch cable. It could be so many things. Just don't worry about it right now. Just move on to the next best thing. No big deal.
How did you go from intern to owning Jamdek?
Yeah,
or Mimball into Jamdek?
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
So this happened. I remember I was actually like mixing a band, and the owner came in, and he would probably like hate for me explaining this story, but he shut the door, and he was, and the band had to leave because he needed to talk to me privately. He needed to tell me right then and there. It's like intense, and I thought like, oh my God, I'm being fired.
Yeah.
Oh, because I should tell you, he made me studio manager, so I was doing all the bookings, and everything. So I had this like responsibility of things, And he's just like, can you put on some music? I just don't want anyone to hear. Okay. Like, what is going to happen?
No one's going to hear you. We're in a control room.
I mean, it was crazy. And then, he's just like, yeah, so I'm moving myself and my family to LA and you're going to buy the studio. And I've never owned anything. I've never had responsibility like that before. So obviously I'm just like, dude, there's no way. Like, I'm not your guy. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he's just like, no, you're going to do it. If you don't do this, I'm just going to like sell the parts and pieces. So I'm pretty much giving you an ultimatum. And pretty much telling you have to do this. You're the only one I trust you to do this, basically, is what he told me. Because we worked so much together that I think he really wanted to keep the concept of the studio going. And like just the vibe, right? The V word. And so I had to meet up with him a bunch and figure all this out. It was crazy, There's just no easy way of going about that. Getting a lawyer, him getting a lawyer, our lawyers talking, taking out a giant loan that was insane. But whatever, I was been through college, so taking out big loans is no big news
that's college already.
Yeah, so,
that's cool.
Yeah,
wow.
And then I was already doing the booking, so he'd already kind of like prepped me for it. I think
maybe he knew.
No, I think he did.
He did.
Yeah.
How long was he doing that for?
Owning the studio. So actually, if you want to continue it from Minball to Jamdek, it's been open for over 10 years now.
Okay.
So
he had a lot of experience.
He had a lot of experience, and he kind of came out of like a few studios, but I would kind of say that he came out of the Soma studio, so John McIntyre's studio.
Okay.
So Jamdek or Minball at the time was always kind of like teased as like the little Soma, because it was literally built very similar to Soma, and then a lot of the same musicians came through. They shared a lot of the engineers, and then once Soma closed, it was sort of like all that clientele sort of like kind of came over there. So
I love those. I love like the studio you have. There's so like little hidden gems. Like if you drove past there, you'd be like, "That's an abandoned building," and just keep going.
Yeah.
You would
Like
never
that's
know.
definitely a drug front.
Yeah,
for
you'd
sure.
never know.
Yeah.
You know what just hit my noggin? It was August 2015. It was the Peekaboo show, and I was recording it. And I asked you if I could unplug the patch bay and split it.
That's
and it wouldn't affect you because I had the transformer splitters, and you were kind of nervous about it.
This is a great reason where I can bring up Elliot and bring up this. I can merge this together.
Okay.
So you look at that. You look at that snake, right? And you're like, okay, 1 through 24, right?
Yeah.
But that's not right. It's 1, 27, 24, 3, 5.
Why was it such a hot mess?
I think because like,
especially for it's the empty bottle.
But see,
this isn't just some place.
But man, that's the rep of the bottle.
Like you could just put a new snake on there. Like they could buy it in one night from the sales.
But that's just not the fun of it. You know, they installed all that stuff. It's so much easier to keep it there and just put some tape and write a number over it, and you just have to fly with that.
So funny.
And it is so stressful, especially because it wasn't a digital board.
Yeah,
it was an Allen Heath.
Is it now?
It is now.
Okay. I like
the
digital board.
Yeah, I learned everything, hardware, no digital, nothing in that venue.
That's awesome, though.
And so, you know, when you would have a touring live sound engineer come in, and they would use so many channels and so many, you'd have to like move their channels off the snake down to your next channel. So like, I had responsibility of like setting up everything very quickly, and maybe I got like a 20-minute sound check and writing down all of my like changes between sets of where my mic inputs would go.
Yeah.
And that's God.
That's a mess. That's a signal flow mess.
That place gave me so much anxiety.
I can't imagine.
And also we don't even do this, but like, you know, we even talked about where the freaking console was in that venue. Yeah. It's like you might as well mix out of the bathroom.
Yeah, it's not a good position.
It's awful.
It's bad. That layout, it's iconic.
Yeah.
But my God, is that a bad layout for audio?
But I will be very honest with you that working there made me a really solid live sound engineer, because you were dealt with so many troublesome issue, like everything, like right, you'd have to like mix it and then run out to that like wooden floor, because the whole PA points a whole different direction.
I remember you doing that,
and like all these things. And so, you know, what was kind of fun about that is that if I were to continue on, or some of my best friends that still work there, but they have also gone on to like work with huge bands. It's kind of funny. Like people ask like, you know, where have you done live sound at? And then you'll tell them that you did so many years at the bottom, like you're instantly hired. Cause like, okay, you've dealt with everything, horrible situation possible. We know you're like primed for it.
Right.
And I think Elliot would hate for me to say this, but I think he just does it on purpose. He just like, he throws it at you.
If you whisper, he won't hear it.
Yeah. I think he really does. I think he just throws you in these crazy situations and just like pushes your limits. So that way, when you actually go on to do something, you're like, I got it.
I respect that a lot.
Yeah.
I treat, out of necessity, but I also treat like the live sound engineers when we do DZ Fest the same way, where I give them the bands that are playing, but I don't tell them their setup.
Yeah.
So dude, there's 2 drummers on this next band. Yeah. I got 30 minutes.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm like, yeah. And like I was talking to my friend Trevor, he does live sound at DZ Fest, and we were talking about it yesterday, and he's like, yeah. And then Ben throws 2 drummers at me, and I tell him like, hey, but now your threshold's way up here, so everything underneath that is a joke.
Yeah.
Now when you go to record a drummer or do sound for you, it's like, yeah, that's easy.
Totally.
I had to do improv 2 drummers in the middle of a 95-degree day in front of everybody.
Yeah.
With 0 time or prep, and now like, so it's like I almost do it on purpose. Like I don't tell them everything. Like, these are the bands, these are the times, and they have to like figure it out, and it makes everyone so sharp,
so
cute, so on top of stuff. it sets your bar so high.
Yeah.
And now, like, your bar was set so high at the empty bottle because it is a very difficult place to mix properly at. It's not like sitting at Shuba's or Lincoln Hall where you're like directly in front of it, the perfect 2/3 back, just perfect, small.
And also learning to, like, we talk about, again, like communication with bands. You learn that very quickly, especially, not to get too technical about this, but like getting in like, the world of like monitor mixing, especially when they don't have a separate monitor mixer and you have to mix the monitors too. And you're standing behind the console and you can't hear what they're hearing. So, you get that world of like, it just sounds weird up here. That's like the classic phrase. Where it's like, well, what do you mean by that? And so
they don't have the verbiage.
Yeah. So you just kind of have to like fly with that and learn, even if you need to walk up there and hear it too, which is nice now when you get like digital with like the iPads, you can actually walk up there and like take the order like it's a food order.
Yeah. It is pretty amazing.
That's insane.
It's really cool.
But I'm really glad I kind of like started not in that and then got into it slowly. But by that time, I had just become a recording engineer. So I don't do live sound anymore.
Do you perform often? Like, have you performed at shows in the last few years?
I did a lot. I was in a band called Courtesy, and we did quite a bit of last 2 years ago, I guess. We did quite a few shows.
Do you find yourself, now that you have all that experience, when you are on the other side on stage, do you find yourself being really knowing what to say, what not to say to the engineer?
Absolutely.
What I have found
what to ask for
is I just don't. I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah.
I've learned like it doesn't matter. I just needed the drummer, and guess what? I can hear him because I'm right next to him.
Yeah.
I don't need anything. I'm not even going to bother the engineer with anything. Like, worry about the singer.
Yeah.
They are the one who needs it.
I feel like I'm not that chill. I feel like I've learned how to ask for things in a very polite and like a poignant way.
Yeah, and even use the right words for them to understand. Like, you could take that out and maybe just make it like 3 decibels louder.
Yeah.
Just that type of, instead of going, make it a little louder.
Yeah.
Or like, it's too quiet.
Yeah.
Like that's so subjective.
Or even like, I don't even like get up there and be like, can you take out 200 or something? I just be like, can you like scoop a little bit of the low mids out?
Yeah.
And no matter who the live sound engineers, they know that.
They know what that means.
So
I'm a big fan of like, I've been so much on that other end that I don't even want to ask them for something. And I'd rather have the singer, the people who really need to hear it.
Yeah,
I'm playing bass or guitar. It's like, man, I understand the psychology behind this. If I have an amp on stage, I can hear it.
Yep.
And if I practiced, which I have with the drummer, that's all I need. I don't need to hear the singer for cues. I don't need any of that.
Yep.
So if I can clean up this performance up here by having less stuff in the wedge and it cleans up the acoustics into the room, I'd rather give a better performance for us as a band than worry about what I selfishly need. But not everyone thinks they want to like be present in that performance, and I rather just give the best performance for the crowd and the person.
For sure.
Singer. It's always the singer. That's the hardest thing to get right.
Totally.
They're trying to hear their voice acoustically back at them.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
And right now we're in like an age where like everyone wants reverb out the wazoo for their voice,
And like no reverb in the monitor. What are you doing?
I know that's
it will exist out there, I promise you.
I know. And that's the tough one where, especially when you get into, I think the biggest part of the empty bottle, the hardest thing was when someone would bring a effects processor for their vocal, instant feedback no matter what. It's just like, it was just impossible. Like, and like to like explain to someone like, I can't do that.
Unless they have a clean dry. Do they have that?
No. Like it's that darn Boss pedal, that red one. That thing has ruined my life.
I want to throw those out.
Whoever invented that thing is just the...
I'll tell you. And Boss invented it.
Yeah.
And Boss makes like 10% of their products are amazing.
Yeah.
Another 90%, I'm like,
And there's better ones out there that, are great. But yeah, that one in particular, something about like the hot signal coming out of it, it just has made my life just horribly bad when doing live sound.
I tell singers that when I see that they do that, I say, all right, do you play anything else? They go, no. I'm like, your one job is to be a good singer and to have, that's your one instrument.
Yep.
So you buy yourself a good mic,
Yep.
like a real good one, a good XLR cable,
Yep.
buy yourself a $100 Mogami Gold cable, and buy yourself a really, really, really nice vocal processing pedal or machine. Because your guitar players and drummers spent all this money. Yeah. So if you're going to want to fit into that level with them and actually make it worth the engineer's time and their time, then get the good. Don't buy a $120 one or expect it to be magical. Like, put in the effort.
Yeah. Or just like, honestly, and I feel like what you're talking about is like when you're a really controlled singer. Like some singers, like, I know the reverb I want. Yes. I don't want to leave it up to the live sound engineer, which I get, but there has to be some kind of like leeway, right? What you're saying about that. Or, if you do have an idea, then trust the live sound engineer that they're going to like get the
Convey it to
reverb
them.
right. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Totally. So
And that's going to sound way better than the pedal. 100%
yes,
of the
it
time.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny. I love hearing these things because I have very few people in life I can relate to
Vent.
on all these, like, because we've had countless shows here in the basement, and we have a legit live sound setup with legit control over each individual monitors, X32. The people who run it went to Columbia for live sound reinforcement, so it's like, it's a very legit DIY thing, and we always run into those issues. But we have a good way of, Trevor and other people who have helped have a really great way, because they're also musicians, and they've worked with me. So they know the language, and they just say, like, we can't have reverb in the monitors, but I guarantee it will be through the mains.
Right.
It'll help with your feedback.
Yeah.
It'll be more controlled and sustained. If you want, just communicate. Just tell me whatever you need. I'll add more of it. I'll have short delay, long delay, reverb. I'll control it all. And they're really, because they're musicians, they know what that means. And they're really good at playing with when the singer has a long arch of just like, oh, they'll like mess with that, and they'll play they'll play the X32 like an instrument.
Yeah.
And it's cool. And and the singer's always, because eventually it gets so big and loud that you'll hear it coming through the room, and you're like, oh wow, that did sound great. I did hear the reverb. Okay. And then it eases the pain, eases the frustration.
I would even like say, I don't know if this is like right to say this, but like, as a vocalist, no matter what band you're in, you should really try to practice your vocals dry.
Absolutely.
Right. And then all the effects are just great afterwards. But I'm afraid that a lot of bands, when they're practicing, they just juice it with reverb and like, cool, sounds great. It makes me sound good. And then you go to record and you record their vocal and they're like, ooh, I'm so pitched. It's like, well, yeah, you need to really, sit through, practice it. No different than the guitar player, no different than the drummer, especially the drummer. You know? So yeah, I do kind of think there is this like sort of lackadaisical vibe going on with vocalists right now, where they just kind of do it and they're like, how was it? And I'm like, well, how much better can we make it? You know what I mean? And not rely so much on effects to supplement that. So
effects enhance.
Yeah.
They take what is already
and that's
good
something
and make it great.
When people are like, ooh, that vocal was a little weird. Do you just bury it in reverb? It'll be fine. It's like, well, that's not how it works. So that's another thing I've learned through being a recording engineer is how, we talked about like learning drums. I'd say the second most important thing is go take lessons, vocal lessons, and learn the anatomy of singing and breath support.
Absolutely.
Because that's another thing was when I'm recording a vocalist, learning breath support and learning how to get that sound and like suggesting or working with them, they will thank you so much, because that's a huge helper that a lot of people maybe haven't like taken those lessons or understand the breath support, or, maybe like don't take a breath here, but take a breath here, or all those things. Because when you're learning how to like punch in, right, to get a good vocal, or you're comping a vocal, I really learned that the most natural way is try to get like a really good full take, multiple takes, and then punch in here and there, or comp it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But knowing that knowledge of like how a vocalist can like really give you a good performance and making them comfortable too, obviously, is like so key.
Yeah.
So
vocals is the hardest one.
Yeah. I hate to say it, like, but to be a really good recording engineer right now, you have to just kind of like know all of this information.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you don't necessarily like sign up for lessons, but there's like, if I'm not working, I'm probably like watching YouTube videos about something, So
yeah, or talking to people that do it.
Talking to people that do it.
Plenty. I had no vocal coaches, and I asked these questions.
Yeah.
Drummers, I asked the drummer questions. But everyone, understanding, like earlier we were talking about the drum kit, how it's really important. You should know everything about it. It's like you also should know everything about the bass.
Yeah.
About the guitar.
Yeah.
If you're not a guitar player, know what each string is.
Yeah.
Know what each pickup is, how the selectors work, what they do, what a machine is, how it works, how it's in tune, how it's not, why they're tuned in fourths, why they're like all of this. Accumulates and helps you better to communicate with that person. Like, oh, well, maybe try this or that. Oh, you know what? You want to go for that tone. Maybe switch to the neck pickup because it's going to be a little bit more warm.
Yeah.
And you won't have to do so much in equalization, and then you'll have a better pure tone. There's so many things like that.
Yeah.
Even the effects pedal, like, oh, I'm trying to get this sound. Like, well, I know that the delay is going to sound like this. Maybe try the analog one, couple it with that, make it less reverb. maybe, your amp's a little muddy. Maybe turn on the deep setting, but then turn up the brightness.
Yep.
Turn down the bass because it's going to have a different contour.
Yep.
All these things are so helpful.
Totally.
You know,
and how it sounds coming out of the speakers may be totally different in the live room even.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially the amps. That
Of
seems to
course.
be the case.
And it'll make them more comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, he's like relating to me.
Yep.
He's not just like this machine that's saying all these technical words I don't understand.
Yep.
He's on my level and he's relating, or she's relating, or anyone's relating.
Yep. And I'll usually use the language of like, if I have an idea of a sound, I'll usually say, if they're trying to get something, I will never direct them like, you should do this. I'll usually word it as in like, when I'm playing guitar and I'm trying to get that sound, this is usually this is my process.
Yeah.
If you want to try it, go for it. If not, they always try it, and it hopefully should work. But
It's a
I
skill set.
reframe it of being like, this is how I would do it.
Yeah.
But if we don't want to do it, that's okay. But I feel like by saying it like that, they're hearing it like, oh, you're just suggesting me. You're not forcing me.
Skill set to learn
Yeah.
how to speak that way.
Yes.
Like in your head, you might be saying it one way, but you know it has to come out, it has to be this way.
I remember Benjamin, if I could like share a not heartbreaking story, but an intense story. Is
Go for it.
One time we were recording this band, and I was assisting him, and we were trying to get some kind of like delay out of a volume pedal to make it trail, like to get these like swells, right? And they had the pedals flipped. So it was not doing exactly what they were talking about. And I remember sitting next to Benjamin, and I was like, she was out in the live room with her guitar, and I was just saying like, oh no, you got to do this. You got to put them reverse, because I know exactly what she's trying to get. If I was like telling her how to do it, and Benjamin just turned to me and goes, can we talk outside for a second? I was like, oh no. And he took me back there, and then the lounge was just like, never, ever, ever speak like that to a band. I will do that if I need to, but never do that again. Right. I was an intern then, so it was like, okay, right, totally heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And every intern gets that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's gonna happen where you just like it's not because you're being rude. A lot of times you're just excited. You're in the moment.
You're excited.
You're so stoked because
You just have to learn a new way to say the same thing.
Or especially
know?
the intern, do not talk.
Yeah.
That's
learn
really
how to say the same thing.
Or just like lean over and be like, okay, I have an idea. Yeah. And then like be like, what is it? And he'd be like, just shut up. I'm like, okay, cool. And I
It
did not do
sucks
that.
because sometimes like an intern can be right, but because you're like the intern, the band doesn't even take you as seriously.
Totally.
So if you do say something, they're
who's
like,
this guy?
This person's out of line.
Yeah.
It's actually funny. Like there's some ideas brewing. I'll be very vague about it, but soon there'll be. I'll have other people like doing sessions here if I'm out of state.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back and do the post production, the editing. But they'll be capturing. They'll be meeting with bands.
Right.
And the biggest thing is like they're comfortable with the technology, the cameras, the mics, how to set up everything. But the biggest thing I'm telling them is like, I have to teach you how to interface with these bands.
Right.
You're not used to meeting 1,000 different bands from all different backgrounds and learning how to choreograph the art of conversation and explanation and walking them off these ledges. Tell them that take was okay. You could say, that take was fine, you're fine.
Yep.
And then they're just like, ugh. Or you can be like, it's all right. A lot of people don't like it. That's okay though. We could try it again, but it might not be quite the same. Honestly, I think that one's really great. Let's stop there and go to the next one. If you really feel like coming back, we can. But I really believe that was fine. I hear a lot of music, and I didn't hear any technical issues. So it's probably something you guys are used to. You're in your own head about it. That's all right.
Yep.
And that takes effort. It takes patience to just say that. When I could have said like, it's fine, let's move on. I just spoke for a minute.
Yeah.
Just say the same thing.
That's a really interesting concept because it's a balance of that. Because I've had many times too, especially let's say like a guitar solo overdub, right? And especially with guitar solos, it seems to be like this. But someone could record it, and it could be like the first take, and I'd be like, "That was it, no more," because it truly can happen where like I really don't want bands or artists to like, overthink something too much. So you kind of gotta be like, "That was a really good one. We can do another one. Go for it." And I'll give them like 3. You know what I mean? And then voice my opinion as far as like which one I really loved. So it is like that kind of that language again that we talked about of
It's
like
a balance.
It's a balance. Yeah. It's like all intuition. All this is all intuition.
Yeah.
Right. And learning the words, but really having a gut feeling.
Experience
you know what I
too.
mean?
Like how long you been playing music for?
Long time. Yeah.
13, 14, 15?
Well, I started playing guitar when I was 6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I was a farm kid and I had nothing to do. Nothing.
How many kids were in your school?
Oh, well, my graduating class in high school was 28.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's made up of 5 towns.
God. Mine was like 500, and that's, yeah.
I mean, it was cool in some ways that like everybody knew everybody. Everyone knew their parents, their grandparents.
That's not a good thing.
Well, I mean, it's like,
You know why? Because when one person messes up, which
Yeah.
will statistically happen,
Yeah.
everyone knows it, and they get
Totally.
shunned. They get looked down. Oh, so-and-so did this.
Absolutely.
In my world, you just get lost in the
And you
ether.
can't get away with anything.
No, you can't.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, but there were like some fun things about it. You
No,
know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
these were all also like farm kids too. And, you know, when you got into high school, it was like, hey, we're going to go drink in the middle of the cornfield in the waterway. You
Yeah.
know, like silly things.
Yeah.
Like that was normal to me. And then like,
Do you guys go like a what's it called?
hayrack ride.
When you like drink and drive in pickup trucks, what's it called? A case route? Case route?
Yeah, there's a
that's
lot
what
of
it's called.
a term for it down there. There is absolutely a lot of drinking and driving down there for
Oh
sure.
yeah. Well, it's like, what are you gonna hit?
Just in your yeah, and
Nothing.
you're driving on gravel roads.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone is in a pickup truck going like 15 miles an hour.
Right. I'm not saying this is good, by the way.
No,
but
I know.
but at the same time, I get why
They
that's
still
where
call
your
them,
mind
they
goes
still
to
call
that.
them roadies down there.
It's a problem in those small towns. A lot of
Yeah.
issues are like pills,
yeah,
meth, and alcohol.
meth is super
because heroin's not coming in,
bad. Yeah,
cocaine's not coming in, weed's not coming in.
Yeah.
No one's gonna bring it to some small town.
Right.
So it's stuff you can manufacture
Totally.
or steal.
yeah,
It's pills you could steal from your parents or for somebody. Alcohol you can buy legally,
yeah.
or meth that you can make or get from someone who made it. Yeah,
Totally.
it's a huge problem.
And it's just kind of like, you know, a lot of those houses that are questionable out in the countryside. When you're like, that one's boarded up and that's weird. It's probably a meth house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's kind of a new thing. I mean, that kind of started happening when I was in high school. But man, when I was a kid, it was really fun. Halloween, especially, so fun.
Why is that?
Because the whole tradition of like the hayrack rides,
Oh, they're gonna say because trick or treating, we had to run a
trick or
mile to the
treating
next house.
was awesome.
Where did you go to trick or treat when
I mean, like
everything's far?
Victoria was super close, and that had like 130 people in it. So that's where I went to grade school.
That's it.
And
130 houses.
That's it. And you know, every house, you know which lady had the best popcorn balls.
But what happens
you know?
when you get through it in like an hour and a half?
You just go back around and wear a different costume. For real.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
You have what, 4 costumes
That's
for
my
Halloween?
Exactly. And my mom sewed them all. She was waiting to like join fabrics.
Is this a
and
known
sew.
thing?
Yeah.
Did the people ever pick up like, there's a lot of kids here, even though our population's not
They
this
were
big?
fine. They're like,
They
oh, here
knew?
comes the Malone kid
Did
again.
they know?
Yeah, they know. But like, whatever. They just entertained it. But
Because around here, you just find a neighborhood
Yeah.
in the suburbs around here that has houses closer to each other with
Yeah.
less steps.
yeah.
And you're set. You fill up, we used to use pillowcases. You just fill up 2 pillowcases,
Sure.
you know, in a couple hours, you're set.
Yeah.
I never thought about the change it out.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Halloween was great. And what's so cool is that so many of my mom's friends that she went to school with all lived there too. So they would all get together as parents and put together some kind of like fun, like haunted house thing for us. And yeah, it was great. It felt, I should stress back then, you could still have a pretty decent job and live in these small towns. It was actually possible. I mean, a lot of factory jobs and stuff. And once they all left in the 90s, that's when it all just like nosedived. Yeah. But back then, it was actually a pretty fun little
70s, 80s,
simple,
early 90s.
Yeah, it was fun.
What happened to them when they left? Like, where did the jobs go? Like, what did people start doing?
They had to move to bigger cities, Peoria especially, which is an hour away. Yeah, just the whole economy around there just collapsed. Wow. And even farmers are just like in way experiencing difficult times to be a small farmer, right? Because these giant farms are kind of buying them out now. And
are you off I-55? Like, where at?
I actually exit I-55 onto I-80, and I take that down for 2 more hours.
I-80.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So you take I-55 to I-80 and take
Yep.
I-80 west.
Yep. Southwest. Yeah.
And then where do you go off I-80?
Then I get off around an exit for Galva, and that's where the only adult book and video is right there, so that you might know the Lion's Den. I get off at the Lion's Den.
I never understood adult book and video still when we have these devices.
Dude,
You're
it's
like,
just-
what do we do?
It's the OG, you know?
It's just so goofy. It's clearly people who are out of touch with modern technology.
I guess so, but maybe they just, some people like analog recording, some people like digital recording,
That's where we are, yeah.
Some people want to hold a book
Yeah.
or a magazine. of
Or
some sort.
magazine.
Yeah.
Or, VHS. I remember a Hollywood video had the adult section in the back.
Totally. Family Video? Did you ever have a Family Video?
Not around here, no.
Okay, so Family Video was really funny because, and they're all closed now too, unfortunately, but growing up, they had these saloon doors that went back to the adult section. Like, they're literally saloon doors. Like, not like saloon. They were literally swinging saloon doors. I love that, like, this, like, really innocent video rental store that had this, like, section, you know?
Would you and your friends ever, like, go back there?
Totally. And it would stink because you would see, like, your high school teacher sometimes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's the problem with
it's a small town.
Exactly.
You
see weird stuff like that.
You know?
That's the problem with it. You can't just do stuff without running into those.
There's
things.
no off the radar. Yeah.
Like the teachers in the schools I went to, like most of them didn't even live near here.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
just commuted. They lived miles away. You never saw them.
Not only did the teachers live in that area, but a lot of the teachers I had in high school were also my mom's high school teachers.
Oh, wow.
So you kind of had this like reputation hand down from your parents. They were like,
oh, you're Malones.
Yeah. So they just assume things.
You're a bad seed.
Yeah.
Your father got a lot of merit or demerits.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny.
But it's a give or take. But I still hold on to that like small town energy. You know what I mean? I think the hardest part about it is that when I go back, it's like Trump land, and it really pisses me off.
I mean, it's Trump land anywhere there's not a major metropolitan city
It's
or
true.
a university.
I think it's
Pretty
more that I
much.
just feel duped. I'm angry because a lot of those people that I grew up with, some still live there. These parents that were my, kind of like guidance counselors essentially growing up, right?
Yeah.
And then they would teach me such good life values, especially about community and especially about like that very stereotypical like Midwestern vibe, and being very like having manners and stuff like that. And then you see a freaking Trump flag in their yard, and it's just like the disconnect there is so extreme.
Yeah.
And they're just mad. They're very angry because, as we were talking about earlier about the economy collapsing around that's what they're mad about.
Absolutely.
So
that's a big thing that a lot of people who are more left-leaning or liberal don't understand. That's not necessarily just because they like the person that they're bad or racist or homophobic or xenophobic. They're probably mad about other things.
Yeah.
That's beyond our experience or knowledge because we're too young.
Yeah.
And we're too wrapped up in our own bubble.
But seeing in my own parents, they just want to live in that small town because people like that. Believe it or not, some people like really enjoy it. I did not, but like I do understand the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
But they're just mad that their jobs are all gone.
Yeah. Yeah, you're mad your job is gone and someone says like, oh, we'll bring it back.
Yep.
And you go, I don't really care about the other crap he's saying. I just want my job back.
Exactly.
I need to live.
Exactly.
I want to live.
I just want money again.
I don't want to play this game.
Exactly.
This political identity game.
Yep.
I just want to have enough money for my family again. And whoever's saying it, sure. It just happens that he's saying it.
Yeah.
I don't agree with everything, but I understand where that's coming from.
Yep.
Especially from a small town world, you're not seeing everything else. You're not walking around Logan Square or Humboldt Park and seeing those things.
Exactly.
It's like, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. And the thing is that the Democrat side is really bad at using their words to help. Like they always the small towns feel like they're forgotten all the time. They're not considered even.
Yeah.
And that's not Democrats don't. It's just they just don't talk about it in the way Republicans do.
Yeah.
Like they just kind of they just say like, well, that area's red anyway. We're just going to focus on Chicago. Or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Screw them.
Yeah. We don't need to spend time. But it's like that's where they mess up.
Yeah. I just drove to Florida and back.
Yeah.
Well, in the fall, I drove to Baltimore and back. In March, I drove to Florida and back. In May, I drove to Texas and back, Dallas. And then 2 weeks ago, I drove to Utah and back to Grand Canyon and to Angels Landing in Zion National Park. So I've seen like 11,000 miles of this country.
Yep.
98% of it rural, if not more. I saw a lot of stuff. Saw a lot of Trump signs. Saw a lot of Confederate flags.
Yeah.
But I also saw a lot of like other things that weren't that. All these small towns, and you see how vast this country is. It gave me I drove this whole thing in my own Honda Civic, and I spent hours doing this, and I saw it, and I did it all during the daytime. So I really saw it and took it in, and it was a really great learning experience to see how vast this country is, how vast this world is. Makes sense. Like you could see how people don't understand or get along.
Yeah.
There's mountain ranges separating you. There's oceans.
Yep.
There's farmlands. You drive through Nebraska, it's just like 10 hours of just nothing.
Yep.
but these little tiny farm towns, just nothing is going on. Even driving past Omaha and Lincoln, you don't even see it. You just keep going. And you're like, these people are out here in the middle of nowhere. Like, what do you think's how they feel? They're losing this, they're losing that. They have no connection. They feel like they're forgotten about.
Yeah.
I get it. Maybe I don't agree with their ideologies,
right,
their religious backgrounds, or how they feel about things, but there's still people in this country and we still coexist. We have to figure out something.
Yeah.
And then you go back to a major city. You go back to Chicago, and you're like, oh, it feels good to be back. But then you're like, but now I'm just in my bubble again.
Yeah.
And it was nice, as much as I don't agree with a lot of it, it was nice to get out of that and just at least see it. See it for real. Not fly over it.
Yeah.
Not talk about it on Twitter.
Yeah.
Not look at a YouTube video, but actually throw myself into there
and you
really
know,
take it in.
What's so heartbreaking is that in reality, if you go to that small town coffee shop and you talk to someone who lives in that area, they actually want the same damn things.
Yeah.
And so it's mind-boggling that like what they want is healthcare and a decent paying job and all these things. They want that stuff, you know? And it's just these words have been so directed to the other side, or, you know, just bad mouthing, you know, mudslinging words all the time, just to be like, this person believes this, don't trust them. This person believes this, don't trust them, you know? So you really get this divide. And that kind of happens probably if you were to go to small towns, like, I'm from Chicago, they're probably like, oh God.
And they could tell.
Yeah.
I'd show up in the clothes and shoes I'm wearing.
A Honda Civic.
A Honda Civic with the clothes I'm wearing. They're just like, this guy.
City boy.
Just too much color. They're just like, why does he have so many colors and patterns on?
Yeah.
They know right away.
Totally.
Even my like language, you walk in and you can just tell. You go into those hole in the wall gas stations, just middle of nowhere, Colorado, the middle of the straight up desert in Utah, where the sign says no signal, no gas, nothing for 105 miles.
Yeah.
And that is some of the best driving you've ever done in your life, because you get to go about 95 miles an hour. There's not a soul out there.
Yeah.
The speed limit's 80. There is nobody. And you're in this vast canyon, which clearly used to be an ocean, just under mountains, 50, 60 miles in each direction. That's how far away the mountains are. And it's 110 degrees out. And you're just out there. And it's just you, music, your two friends. And you see like, man, this country, this world is so big and vast and gorgeous. I mean, some of these valleys you're driving down, they take 30 miles to get down it, and it's just like this big slope of thousands of feet.
Yep.
You feel your ears popping, even though you're barely going down this really small angle, and it's massive. And then you go to these little towns. We went to these such small towns to get gas. The only restaurant in the whole town is an Arby's.
Yep.
And it's probably a town of like 300 people, middle of the desert. I'm like, what do they even do out here? There's one gas station, there's an Arby's, there's a bank, there's like nothing. There's abandoned stuff everywhere.
Yep.
And you're just like, these people are people, and they work and they live and they have their school. They're away from everyone.
Yep.
Like they matter too.
Yeah.
And they might have the wrong ideas. They might be racist. Maybe they're not. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's not fair to assume.
Right.
I should probably at least go talk and look at it. And you go there and everyone's doing their thing. There's all different types of people there. People waiting in line to get their food, and everyone's just they're humans.
Yeah.
You know, and they just have the wrong thing put on them.
Yeah.
It's like, I've met racist people in Chicago.
Yep.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
I've met them in the middle of nowhere. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
People who don't understand another type of person.
Yep.
A person who is sexist, a person who is xenophobic, a person who is Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Christian, atheist. They're everywhere.
Yep.
You know, we can't just put them in this bubble and say, like, no, they're only there.
Yeah.
It's like they just identify as a Republican, but it doesn't always necessarily say how they actually feel about another human being.
Totally.
You know, and it's just hard.
It
it's
is
sad.
hard, especially in the small towns. I'd say there's a definitely like lack of education.
Yeah.
You know, so it seems like every problem that we kind of talk about politically or anything, it just seems to derive from, lack of education.
Absolutely.
Like, it's just
education is everything.
Yeah,
it's everything.
Mm-hmm. And like that was something where I grew up. My elementary school was tiny. I mean, I had 9 kids in my class, and what was so cool about it though is that you had to bunk up. So we only had so many teachers. So your first and second grade class was together, and it was taught by one teacher. And so she'd teach first grade side for a little bit, and then she'd tell you to do your homework. Then she'd teach the second grade side, all in one sitting. Mm-hmm. And then we got third, fourth, one teacher, fifth, sixth, one teacher. Mm-hmm. So you really had like 3 teachers, and one of them was the principal, and her husband was our PE teacher. So small.
Yeah.
But, the family side of it was really good. The bummer about it was that these are teachers who are, probably didn't even go to college or something. You know, they're just regular people. And they have no training of like how to de-escalate things or how to properly talk about things, or, you know, and hopefully maybe that's changing now. I don't really know. But that's kind of the weird things. They don't have access to proper training and resources and stuff, you know? So,
yeah, the more rural you get, the worse usually the education gets. I have a couple of my friends who I visit in Texas. They're from a part of Texas that is known for being like having the worst education, the highest pregnancy rate amongst women, amongst the girls, where it was something ridiculous. I couldn't believe the number. It was like, I don't know the number. It was a lot, where it's like 1 in every 6 girls was pregnant. You're just like, what? That's insane. It was like 1 or 2 girls in my high school.
Because it's like a norm down there.
It's normal.
You know?
It's what you do. They're not aware of contraceptions and their health classes, because it's too much going against the Republican Christian values.
Yeah.
So you don't talk about it.
Right.
You just don't.
Assumed.
You just assume like, nope, you don't have sex until you get married.
Yeah.
But like that's not how humans work.
Right.
You know,
It's
not everyone's
never
going to believe. No, it's never worked.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. I hate to break it to you.
Yeah.
And they were like, it was bad. And there's parts of Mississippi, Alabama, because I've driven across I-10 from, Florida, Tallahassee, across, you go through Georgia, Mississippi, or Alabama, Mississippi to Louisiana. I've driven around this whole country. It's kind of fun.
It's great.
I mean, there's some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But you get to actually see it and be like, that is crazy.
Yep.
Someone on the news didn't tell me it was crazy. I got to make that a decision myself.
Absolutely.
And you find out like a lot of their education, their 8th grade education is where we are in 5th grade, 4th grade. By the time you get to high school, it's like they're in junior high and they're behind. And like, what do you think is going to happen with that? They're actually not to blame.
Right.
When that's what they're shown and taught, and it's part of their system.
Yep.
So you have to at least give them the benefit of the doubt and at least explain it instead of berating and saying like, oh, they're just a bunch of, idiots or, hicks and stuff. It's like, that's funny and stuff, but we can make jokes about it, but at its core, it's like, that's a problem. You got to think about it. Like, they're trapped in these small towns. Maybe they're surrounded by mountains, Appalachia. They're not receiving the information. They're not getting the input. Their education is years behind as far as where they are at a mathematical, science, and language level, and could be decades behind as far as what they're being told about social norms and pop culture.
For sure.
It's like, so you got to at least give them that buffer period, at least try to explain it to them. And that's how I am with my parents. They're so in a different world than me and so far behind. Like the last education my dad got was in 1973.
Yeah.
At Gage High School in the south side of Chicago. Most of his education was during the race riots in the 60s. So he was stressed out about that, and he's 100% Mexican.
Yeah.
So he was torn between white people, black people, and trying to fit in being a first-generation immigrant.
Totally.
So he didn't really get much of an education. Honestly, he's just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you think he's going to think? How do you think he's going to live? That's what he knows. He has trauma from that.
Yep.
So you have to take your time with it. You can't be like, oh, this boomer is an idiot.
Yeah.
You got to be like, no.
Yeah.
In order to help, when they say something that might be a little not a good idea to say, you got to sit there and be like, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And reverse engineer it and try to help them understand. Their brain's been printed this way for too long.
Absolutely.
But to just throw daggers at them and be like, screw them, sweep them on the rug. It's like, well, they're not going anywhere.
Yep.
So what's the point of just berating someone and labeling them and saying like, no, screw them? It's like, no, there's still 330 million people here.
Yep.
We have to learn how to coexist somehow.
Totally. And I think what you said earlier, I think the media is really bad about this, where it's like, it really stresses you out, and that like, outside of your city you live in, it's fires and danger and this and this and this. And it just sounds chaotic. But then you drive out there and it's like, oh, this is beautiful. Why was I so worried? You know what I mean? I don't know. I kind of feel like the media kind of pushes that idea, that pressure on
Well, it's numbers.
Yeah.
You get people engaged when fear is the best seller. Most. You make a lot of income with fear.
But I think you're right. You definitely need to go out and just drive through that stuff. And
drive
just
around
look
this
at
country
it.
and see it.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Not enough people do it.
Yeah.
I love road tripping. I love seeing everything
So do I.
and learning about it. I know that, I have to be honest, I'm in a privileged position being a white man.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier for me to travel. I don't have to worry about much, to be honest. Right. I mean, I'll get some looks in certain spots just because I have a beard, a little bit more browner skin, but nothing crazy, nothing to write home about. So to be anybody of color, to be a woman, it's such a different story to travel.
Yep.
But I do the best I can with what I have, and what I have is the ability to travel around and do that. So at least I could take that and pass along that information or try to encourage someone else to try it,
Yep.
But it's wild. This country is, this world is so big. To know how vast the country is and to know there's oceans upon oceans bigger than this country,
Yep.
separating you between that and the next landmass.
Yep.
It makes sense about how everyone's so different, why there's so many different cultures and ethnicities. And I find it to be really beautiful. It's sad that because someone's different, people get mad or aggressive about it.
Yeah.
I find it to be amazing
Yeah.
when there's differences.
There's
It's
going to be
really-
no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah. No matter what you do.
I know. That's where music comes in.
Yeah,
It glues it all
truly.
together.
It does glue it all together.
It
Yep.
brings it, like, there's so many.
Signal flow.
Signal flow. Exactly.
Same thing.
Has there been any bands, you don't have to anymore, you can, that stuck out that you recorded where you were like, this is like almost like some of my favorite music I've ever heard?
You know, I think it's always, in my mind, maybe because it's so fresh, but it's always like the recent things I've been doing. I really do love everything I work on. I really put my entire energy into it. So I know that, like, when it's done, I'm a fan of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I tell bands that where I'm like, is it selfish to feel this way? That, like, really when I'm working on someone's record, I'm just hearing it as if I was an extreme fan and, like, how I want to hear it.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of like how I approach it. So everything I feel like I do, I'm like super excited about, you know? But yeah, this right before the pandemic happened, there was a stretch of some records that I did that I felt like I got to actually showcasing, all right? Showcase my, like, production chops more, like trying to really push ideas and maybe, like, take things a different route that originally weren't set in stone, you know? But I think, yeah, the Moon Type record was really fun. That was a good one for me because they were really good. They're really good friends and they're really good musicians. And it was cool to be able to start recording, but at the drop of a hat, be like, okay, here's maybe something different we could do. And I'll get really specific here. So I think this kind of goes with every band. I'm really obsessed with the idea of, like, talking with them about the sound that they want. And maybe, like, what can we do to make this band sound like, one, themselves, but two, just something different. Something different. Like, I don't want to copy something. I just don't. I don't have it in me. It's not fun. You know, I don't want to work on a band that wants to sound just like Tame Impala. I just don't. It's like, that's been done. I love it. I'm not saying I hate it. I don't have the drive to do that. It seems like a waste of time in my brain, which is maybe not the nicest thing to say, but I just don't like to be I don't like to make records that are just so strictly this thing. I really want to, like, try to make something different some way. But when you talk about a band sounding like their own identity versus, like, that, I think those go hand in hand. I think you actually, like, ultimately get to a band sounding like more themselves doing that process. But so I think with that record in particular, that was a fun one where it was like some fast experimenting and but still kept to themselves, you know, as far as their identity and their sound. So yeah, they have an album called Bodies of Water, and this is like my third record I've done that's come out on my friend Greg's label called Born Yesterday. But I think, honestly, there's one record that actually the first one I did on that label, it was this band called Drool. Oh man, that still, that was like a record. They're only 2-piece, and, like, I saw them a couple times and was always just blown away by their sound. Just, like, it was so unique. I just never heard anything like that before. And
Drool. Where are they from?
Well, they were from Chicago originally, but Hirsch, the guitar player, he lives out, I think Baltimore, I think now. I mean, it's Philly, I think, somewhere in Philly. But so after that record was done, they, like, essentially split up. And that one was so fun because when you especially just have two people in the band, you know, there's less to kind of, like, deal with in a way. So the setup was a little easier. But yeah, the sheer amount of, like, experimentation that went on, that was fun. And when I listen to it now, I'm like, oh, it's not like the best mixed record, but I love it. I love it that I really went for it, or we all went for it, and just tried to make this, like, crazy thing. And
when was that made?
I mean, only like 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and I love that album. I really do. I think, like, it's, like, the closest to maybe, like, what goes on in my head as far as, like, controlled chaos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so there's
that
a
one was
couple of
fun.
records that you're like, I could listen to this. I would like this.
Yeah.
If I heard it from a different source, I'd still
all
love it.
records are like that to me. I really do. Every one of them that I work on, I really make sure that gets out.
I'm talking more even like genre though.
Oh, yeah, but even like genre.
So being an engineer
Yeah.
has opened your palette for genres.
I would say that being my obsession, having an obsession for multiple genres made me an engineer. Right? Like I think that
That's a good way of putting
that
it.
was always my struggle in playing in a band where I want to do too many things,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then so I was like, oh God, this makes total sense why engineering is so fun for me because I get to work on a rap record and a indie record and a doom metal record. And I've done a lot of country lately, which is really, really fun. Like kind of like, not modern country, but you know, like
Old time folk,
Sturgill
bluegrass.
Simpson style, you know.
Some of the best musicians
that kind of stuff.
are like country bluegrass.
Totally.
They're all
and I grew up
trained.
with bluegrass music and country music. So
Of course you did.
it's kind of like full circle for me
Yeah.
when someone's like, oh man, we want to do like a 90s country. I'm like, oh my God, do I know that sound?
Yeah.
Not intentionally, just by default. It's in my blood, you know?
If there's a fiddle involved, that
Yeah.
person is one of the best musicians you ever hear.
Yeah. So my first show I ever went to when I was a kid was Dwight Yoakam, very little. So like, you know, that that sound was integrated very young. So, and that's what my parents listened to. My dad is obsessed with old country, played a lot of it, you know, anything from George Strait to way older, right? That's more like 90s stuff. But yeah, all that old stuff is great.
What made you come from that area and want to go to Chicago and not a different city?
So I think the biggest thing was, when I graduated high school, I went to community college in Galesburg, and I went 3 years there studying music and whatever, just not really knowing what I was doing yet.
Same thing. I did 3 years at the community college here, not knowing what I was doing.
It was
studying
great.
music. So there you go.
And then I moved to Austin, Texas after that.
Oh, okay.
And I lived there for a few years, but I think I was there for like 4 years.
Why'd you go there?
That was kind of an interesting thing where I was already playing in bands in high school and stuff, and we played up in the Quad Cities a lot. And there was a band there that we played a lot of shows with, and they were traveling down to Austin every summer because that's the very first couple of years when like Austin Psych Fest started, like the very, very first ones. And they would always tell us, or tell me specifically, like, hey, if you want to like keep doing music, you should move down there. There's a great music scene. And so yeah, around like in 2000 and when was this? Around 2008, I moved down to Austin, and it was still pretty chill. It hadn't quite gotten crazy down there yet. And I just went on Craigslist and just moved in with random people. Literally had a Saturn Ion, just like loaded it up and drove down there, you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah, and just...
Was it plan to go to school there at all? Or
no, just totally planned to just be an adult for a second, or young adult, and just live for a second. I just felt like I needed to. I needed to get out of that small town that I grew up in.
Absolutely.
And just learn what it means to not be in that small town.
Yeah.
And that means a lot of things. That means learning a whole bunch of life skills, like learning that there are just, again, that the world is a lot bigger than you think it is, right? That's really what it is. And it was great. Back then, you got to live downtown Austin super cheap. It was the perfect city for a college student on a budget.
What year was this?
2008.
Okay.
So it was nuts. It was great. It was like a playground. And there were so many young people living there. And I feel like I got to meet so many musicians. And I think really what I want to do is I had played bands in high school in these small towns, right? And all I knew was that, and I really wanted to go out and like see other musicians and just learn from them. So I essentially became a studio musician, and I was a guitar player, and I would record guitar in all these different studios for these bands. And so that's where I started getting the studio bug, was from just watching this go down and seeing the microphones go up and everything. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I had no idea how this worked. And you know, the recording engineers back there like doing it. It's like, oh my God, like that you're doing that. That is so cool, you know? So
it came from being a musician first and foremost.
Absolutely. And so
that seems to be the case for most engineers.
It kind of, you know, it doesn't need to be, but it really helps because again, back to the whole trust thing when you're recording a band, I feel like I need to like look them dead in the eye and be like, I know what you're feeling right now. I've been through this so many times. So I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, and we're going to come together and like understand each other, that like that you're nervous and I understand that. And I'm also nervous because I'm recording.
Yeah. I'm trying to capture your creative endeavor that you stayed up all night writing.
I understand that you, exactly right. I understand that you took so much time to write this song, that you got stoked, that you showed your friend, and that you then showed your band, and you guys like got
you saved it for years to get that guitar to write it on.
And maybe you fired your guitar player over the song. You know, like all these things happen that you need to think about. Yeah. And then you also, here's the big kicker, is that you got together and you're like, we should go in the studio. It's going to be kind of expensive, but instead of going on vacation, we're going to spend money to record this. Yeah. And then to appreciate that they were like, we should record with Doug. You know, so I get that email and I tell him like, thank you. Like, that's super nice you even considered me. That's a huge compliment that you would even email me, you know? And then that conversation starts, you know, but always that's exactly where it starts, where it's like, it's all about relatability and just trust. So yeah, it's like, I understand what you're doing and I understand how much you care about this. And again, I understand what you have a song stuck in your head, how it should feel and sound. And I want to get to that, you know? So that trust, when you get that trust, it's cool because, especially when you get to the mixing phase, if you're doing something, and they're like, that's not the direction. I always tell them like, please tell me that. Everyone tell me that. If this is not the right way, tell me that. Yeah. I will never get mad. I'll never give you sass. I'll be like, cool, on to the next thing. You know? So, but it all comes from like taking place of like being in a band, right? And you have to understand, this is huge. I don't want to ramble about this too much, but like when you play in a band, there's body cues going on. So it's really funny to me when bands show up. They're like, wait, we can just record this together in a room. We don't have to like do the drums and then do the bass. And it's like, no, I've never recorded like that.
I don't like doing that. I've done it a couple times. Not a fan.
Yeah, I just don't. Unless it's for like electronic, like something crazy, you know, on the grid and like disco-y or something, maybe. But like, yeah, I love having a band in the room and making sure that they're all together, the eyesight is there. It's all part of that, right? That's like the cool thing about playing in a band is that like, it's kind of weird that we do this, you know? It's bizarre. If you really think about playing in a band, it's ridiculous.
Elaborate on that.
Like it's crazy that someone's like, I want to learn an instrument. Okay, cool. Now I want to go play music with a person who I think I might enjoy being around there. But as you're in the moment of playing, I always have this thought, and it makes me mess up sometimes, but I'm literally in my head, I'm like, this is nuts that we like chose to like get together and there's no words going on. You're just feeling it. And you can see someone you can act. You can see someone like vibing out. They're really feeling it, like, oh my God, there is this thing happening that we actually can't talk about and describe. It's just a thing in a moment.
It's pretty magical.
It's kind of like sex or something.
Yeah, it's like exactly
that,
like
right?
sex.
It's like,
that's actually a great analogy.
Yeah.
It's very much like sex.
Yeah. And you get to be present, but you also have to like listen to everybody and make sure you're not overstepping, but your time is coming to like play your solo or something. Everybody needs to like move together. And so
that's why sometimes it works really well.
Yeah.
Sometimes it falls apart. Because if all those moving parts aren't there, you're just kind of like, it just falls and you feel it. Something's not right. Someone said the wrong thing.
Like you ever played that show that went so well, like the one out of like 30, you know?
Yeah.
That went like really well.
Yeah.
And then you all just stop playing and just look at each other and like you can't say anything. But you can just see it in their eyes. They're like, wow, that was perfect. Insane.
And then the crowd feels it.
Yeah.
You see the crowd move to it. If you've ever played a show, which, like what you're saying, things are going well on stage. It sounds good, feels good, and the crowd's enjoying it. It is one of the craziest feelings
It's a crack addiction. I've never done crack, but like that's, God, the dopamine from that is insane. I just like, it's so intense for me when that happens and lines up that like I need to just go like have a moment by myself and just like think about it.
And that feeling is what propels you forward to keep doing it. The thing that when people are like, why are you doing that? Like, get a real job. It's like, you've clearly never felt this.
It's an amazing
Because if you felt
feeling.
You would be like, I only can do this. Or something like it.
It's especially cool when you're in a band, especially a band that you're friends with, you all get along. And it's like you like came together somehow and like made this happen in this point in time. And everything we're talking about, I have to recreate all that shit in the studio in a day. And I need everyone to feel comfortable. I need everyone to be getting along. I need everyone to be like feeling that feeling. I need their headphones to sound good. I have to like manufacture that vibe. And before anything happens. Yeah.
It's great.
Because if you check all those boxes, your recordings are going to sound amazing.
Way better.
Live
that's why I love doing the live sessions. That's why it's like my bread and butter. It's like, they're sitting there, they're looking at each other. They could see well because of these lights. I put them in a circle. It's just me down there. And we just go for it. And they come in and they just get to have this live recording. it's next to what you're doing. They're just not. It's like adjacent. They're just not like overdubbing vocals or something.
Right.
But it's got the same thing we get to capture on video, and it's such a fun way of doing it. I enjoy having that forever. And then I look back on the catalog of 8 years of doing it, and you're like, man, I have just like thousands of hours of archives of my own existence.
Yeah.
It's like I have this diary, this video audio diary now, and they do too.
Yep.
It's a really interesting thing. I never thought I had so much captured of my own life.
Yeah.
It's really wild.
Yeah.
And you do too. When you listen to or any record you've done, how long have you been making records for?
I mean, see, that's
on and
the thing
off,
is, I mean, like I started making records when I was young, but not working on them. But I mean, as a recording engineer, I mean, it has to be probably like 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, same here. I started my first one in 2011. So yeah, 10 years. It was my own stuff. So I got into it by doing my own music.
Yeah.
10 years of making records. It's like you have this catalog. You can listen back to any of them.
Yeah.
And probably know exactly like, oh man, I remember that, this, and that, how I got that, why. Like, how many would you say you've done? Do you know?
I have no idea.
You know,
I don't know, and I don't even care.
Yeah,
it's like I really don't care.
Enough.
The ones that need to get done. You know what I mean? Like it's a constant forward motion of like, ooh, that deadline's coming up. You know, that deadline's coming up. Oh, that needs to be, remix a little bit or something. But I never answered your question about when I got back to Chicago. So yeah, I was. I met this guy. He doesn't even probably remember me. I was just okay. But like, I met this guy named Graham Parsons, who is like this. Not Graham Parsons. I'm sorry, Graham Reynolds. Graham Parsons. I wish Graham Parsons. Graham Reynolds. Excuse me. Talking about country. And he was a composer. He's kind of like this wacky, kind of almost like country meets John Cage. And he did He did film score music for like Scanner Darkly and
cool.
that movie Bernie. Remember that one?
Yeah.
So he was like doing film music. And in Austin Fasten, they had these once a month events called the Dionysium, and they happened at the Alamo Draft House. And what this was like a philosophical meetup at a movie theater. And they always had a programming. It would always be a topic, and then Graham would always do the music part of it. And he'd give some kind of like presentation and then talk about music. He's super knowledgeable, but he also was releasing these albums that were he would release 2 records in a month, and one of them would be jazz, the other one would be like electronic. He was just all over the place. It kind of blew my mind that he, as an adult, he was much older than me, could just do this. You could just tell he didn't care, had zero hangups. He was just doing everything he loved, and he was teaching too. And I sort of became obsessed with him and stalked him out, and started talking to him. Was just like, I need to like understand what's going on here, like, because you're not playing a rock band. What's going on? How are you doing this? And we started like emailing a lot and talking a lot about electronic composition and everything. And I just love that he was doing all this and putting it into film scores. And so I got really into film music. And that's when I started playing the piano. I took up piano too. And I think Texas got a little too hot, like literally. I missed the seasons. So just, man, too hot. It was crazy. So I moved up to Chicago and was like, I felt like Austin was a really good stepping stone to get a city feel.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to take it up a notch.
Yeah, Chicago's a big notch.
Yeah. So when I moved up here, it's like, great. And that's when I went to Columbia.
Why did you choose Columbia?
That's a really good question. Probably because I had researched that they had like a film music program of some sort. I never even got to it. But like, I think there was something, I think when I heard about a lot of the teachers, we can like go back and forth about, is Columbia a good school, is not, right? Every school has like pluses and negatives. But I definitely heard that Columbia had a lot of teachers that worked there who were in the field.
Absolutely.
Which actually ended up being insanely beneficial for me.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that's
I actually would not have my job if I didn't go to Columbia, for sure. So, I also had a teacher in composition that he whipped me into shape for sure. And his name is Marcos Balter. And I got to study with him privately for quite a bit. And his ideas about composition, timbre, everything blew my mind. Like completely reshaped my idea of sound and music, like really hard.
Yeah.
And it got to me at like the perfect time of my life. I was a little older. I was like 25, I think, when I started my undergrad. So that's kind of I think that's an advantage, because you go into school after like living outside of school for a bit. You've lived a little bit as an adult. So you realize how big the world is, and you realize that like this stuff matters. You know?
Yeah, I went in at 22.
Yeah.
So
So I really went into it hard. And so, yeah, Marcos was really good about showing me just like the elasticity of music, a sound, right? That like what you think is new is probably someone's already been doing it. But you should really like broaden your horizons and question things. That was a big thing. You should question everything, like why you like something, why you don't like something. And it really blew down so many walls for me that I'm very thankful for. I didn't end up continuing being a composer, you know what I mean? But that's something I revisit every now and then. So, but yeah, that's why I went to Columbia. So even though I was like kind of verging on the audio side, I still graduated the composition degree.
Oh, okay.
But I took a lot of audio classes.
Got it.
And that was great because like, you know, I met so many really cool teachers in the audio department too.
Yeah.
Who were kind of on that, what is that, the 6th floor? What was the floor?
6th floor.
Yeah, that's where all the philosophical, you know.
That's the sound place.
Yeah.
The basement and the 6th floor.
Yeah, the basement was the practical stuff. The 6th floor was like, you know, all the dreamers and stuff. Been like, what is sound? You know, what is art? You know,
I enjoyed it.
It was great.
It was a good time between the classes there and the Art Institute and then my own life.
Yeah.
So much information.
Totally.
It made me who I am.
Yep.
You know?
I met a lot of friends, you obviously,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And then the beautiful thing about it is that I can't tell you how many jobs or gigs or sessions I've gotten because of friends through college.
Absolutely.
Because what's weird is that like, yes, you might be studying the similar degree, but everyone goes on and does such wildly different things.
Yeah.
And you all lean on each other in this fun way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful way of working, and kind of honestly the only way of working. When you're freelance, you really depend on your friends. Like
Absolutely.
Truly. I always make a joke and tell bands that it's like I literally make money off of my friends.
Yeah.
It's awful.
But it's true. Like, but they make money off you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
It is. It's so funny though, you know? It's like I would not exist if it weren't for my friends.
Yeah.
You know? So that support me and I support them. And so, yeah, what a weird business model.
It is, but as long as everyone's on the same page and has the same ideas in mind, it's so great because you get to do what you love, have fun with it, and share it with people that you care about. Like your friends, it's not just some like cutthroat business where you're like, you don't want to hang out with these people.
Exactly.
I know so many people in those industries where they're like, I'm not friends with that person. I don't want to be with them.
Yep.
It's like unless someone just ends up being really bad and mean, I love everyone I work with. I had a band come in yesterday. They were really cool. They had fun. They're from Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was great. You know, I have someone coming in today that's from Moldova, an immigrant who came here, trained classical violinist. Yeah. You know, I have someone coming tomorrow that's a student of mine, graduated, was a student of mine. He's in just like an indie rock band, like just all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
And it's all just from saying yes and opening up these doors and working in this community. And they pass along the information. The next one, and you get a text, hey, you want to film here in this date? And it's some bizarre thing, like I might film a concert at the Joliet State Prison. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, yeah. I mean, you just keep saying yes. And you're just like, yeah, it's just like weird stuff.
It is.
But it's just like friends of friends, and you just keep this weird, I can't explain it, but it ebbs and flows and breathes.
It does.
You just got to put it into it,
And if you're a good person, it inevitably goes well.
Yeah,
and
you got to put
it will recommend you for
based on what you were saying earlier. You learn the nice way to say something to someone. Yep. If you didn't and you were rude, mean, inconsiderate, they're going to remember that, and they're not going to pass Doug's name, Jamdek, to the next person.
No. If anything, it's going to do the opposite. We're going to be like, oh, yeah, we went there, and that was odd.
Guy sucked, or he was mean, or was rude.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it. And now that just did the opposite. Instead of sending your name upward, it just sent it down.
Yep.
And now you lose potential stuff or future stuff. It's like, man.
It all comes back, and I will be
totally a nice person.
Honest with you. I've gotten some bizarre recording sessions from the most oddball links, right? Like you know that person? How do you know? It's so weird. So you cannot talk trash.
No, and say yes to everything. It makes your palette wider, helps you understand music better. If you've worked with 50 genres.
Yeah, here's my thing with say yes. Say yes to everything to try it. If you don't like it, never say yes to that again.
Yes,
you know
that's how you know when you shouldn't say yes to everything.
Exactly.
Say yes. I've learned that yes, and then you're doing like I'm not doing that anymore. But at least I have that experience, and now I know my threshold in a certain category.
Yep.
and that's the best you can ask for. But to just turn stuff down because you're like, nah.
Yeah.
It's like, then you just closed off potentially 50 other doors.
When you start out, but almost to kind of like give another sidestep to this talk is that like, I'm kind of rethinking this sometimes because especially when you're recording, if you're an engineer or something, be wise about what you want to work on because there is a backlash to it. Mm-hmm. It's cool to say yes to everything, but it's also, you need to be honest with yourself if you want to do it because let's say, this has happened to me before, where you record a band of a genre that maybe you don't particularly like that genre, be like, I want to try it, right? Cool. And then I did a really good job on it. Well, what's going to happen is that like, they're going to tell their friends that also have that similar thing, and they're all going to come to you, and you're just like, oh no, I didn't say this, So it's a weird push and pull where it's like, yes, in the beginning, it's probably cool to like say yes to a lot of things just to kind of get your bearings going and stuff. But also be careful what you want to
I know what you're saying.
Sign up for because your name's going to be on it and you want to exhibit work that you're proud of, that your name is on it.
Yeah.
And you want that to spread down the right lane.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That you want to go down.
Yeah.
And that's a learning curve.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on it. Maybe not everyone agrees with that, but I would think you should be a little careful when you start really getting into it to like being like, okay, this is not my trick. You know what I mean?
That's how I am with records.
Yeah.
With albums, I'm more particular.
Yeah.
And then with sessions, it's like if
That's
you're in
true.
a band and you have music, I don't.
Yeah, because
I'll
you're
work
kind of
with
doing like
anything.
a simple setup of we have a moment where like a record, obviously you track and you mix.
It's a process.
It's literally a
session's
birthing of a
fast.
baby.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like 9 months.
That's the birthing of a baby.
Yeah.
And the session is just translating what it is, and they just go on.
Yep.
And they use it to get shows. And it's just like, it's a different...
Daycare.
Yeah, it's a different... I love these metaphors. Birthing a baby, daycare. No, it's a very different beast.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like with the intimate evening shows we have here, I'm more particular with.
Yeah.
And then with DZ Fest, I'm like extremely particular
For sure.
with. And like
Yeah.
I really...
That's a big event.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I really pick like, no,
Yeah.
it's gonna be choreographed really well.
Yep.
It's not just yes to everything.
Yep.
And, it's gotten to the point where they say no to a lot of things, which
Yep.
is an interesting place to be at. To like beg people years ago,
Yeah.
and now be at like, sorry, not enough spots. I'm just like, I feel guilty.
Oh no, it's totally okay. But you know what? Like I tell bands a lot too, and I'm sure you say this, is like if you get turned down for a festival or a record label or something like that, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's just a lot of it has to do with timing.
Yeah.
But it's okay to like maybe ask then like maybe what are you looking for or something like that, and then maybe like resubmit again on the next record or something like that.
Yeah.
Like I really do think that if you stick to it and you continue a relationship at least like that, it does end up something
will happen.
or some kind of suggestion or something like that. You know what I mean?
Something.
Just,
Don't give up or be discouraged.
don't give up because you can attest this. Like when you're in a band, trying to find your first show is hilarious.
Yeah.
Or who's going to put your first record? It's hilarious. Like it's just a bunch of inbox of, well, maybe if you even got a response, it's going to be no most of the time.
Yeah, or a rough show. It'll be
A rough show.
Tuesday night, sub T.
Yeah.
Not one of the bands makes sense to
It'll
be
be the
together.
Burlington.
Or Burlington. Well, this was 10 years ago, back when the Burlington wasn't around, or not a thing.
Yeah.
And there'll be 4 bands. Not one of them even makes sense to be on the same bill.
Yep. Your audience will be the bands.
There'll be the band's friends or girlfriends, like 6 people.
Yeah.
And yeah, it'll sound pretty rough because if you've ever played in an empty venue, it doesn't sound that good because sound's reflecting off the hardwood floor.
Unless you're going for that sound. Then.
It doesn't sound very good.
Yeah.
Human bodies are great
Yeah.
at absorbing and diffusing sound.
But it's all struggle at the beginning, right?
But now when you do that, but then when you go through that and then years later you might play in front of 50
Yeah.
or 100, that is such an amazing feeling because you're like,
Totally.
man, I remember looking at an empty place and
Yep.
now it's like half full or fully full, you
Yep.
know? And it's cool when I have a lot of friends that have gone down that world much more than I have and they play sold out shows now. And I'm like, I'm happy for them. I'm so glad because I know that's what they do. I don't play in bands full time. It's not my thing, but that's what they do. And I know they started out in the coffee shop, nobody there, open mic. And now they're playing around the country, sold out. And you're like, that's so cool.
Yep.
It's awesome. So I'm sure you and people like that too.
Especially when you're booking like a festival, it's so, I feel like that's a huge responsibility because you have to like
It's very stressful.
Find a thread of like keeping it, keeping the theme in line, but yet keeping it very varied across the band. What bands you're gonna have play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
It's hard.
Yeah, and then like lining up then that's just choosing the bands, right?
Yeah.
So
And that's not even choosing like the artist, like the 40
Yep.
artists selling artwork, the volunteers, what jobs, who's
Totally.
doing what. It's so crazy.
but it's so awesome when
It's
it
fun,
happens.
though.
I've never been to it because
Come
every
this year.
time I've had a session.
September 25th and 26th.
Okay, I'll book it in my calendar.
You're gonna love it. So many cool bands.
It's so cool that
playing.
you have it out here.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, very
It's-
cool. Outside the city, that's super important.
Yeah, like city limits, still Cook County.
Yep.
You know, same streets
Yeah.
as the city, but just far enough to where we can have a space to do it.
Yep.
This yard does not exist in
Yep.
Chicago. If it did, I'd be a
Do
very
y'all
wealthy person.
You all kind of like set up carpool systems or something like that. It's like
Take
okay, there's
people here?
Yeah, like there's a car leaving here. Join. This person has like 3 seats.
No,
you know
I
what
never
mean?
did. Bands just find their way
Oh,
here.
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 40 bands. I have the lineup completely done. I'm just waiting for all of them to confirm the times
Yeah.
that I gave them, and then the poster's done. So once that, I think I'll show you offline, but
Yeah.
once it'll probably next week it'll come out. So
Yeah.
when this comes out, it'll probably come out. So
Yeah.
I'm excited. It's the most different lineup I've ever had. Only 2 bands I've ever played, all new bands.
Great.
Just it's so eclectic. I've never had so many different genres. I'm very, very proud of it and excited. It took a decade to get to this type of lineup. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
It's also cool because that's the one thing I will say about like Chicago has a very diverse music scene.
Absolutely.
In a very like very appealing way.
Yeah.
Like yeah. And I think that's why it's so fun to be a recording engineer. I know some people like move to LA and move to New York or something like that, but I've really loved recording in the city because it's like every band. That's kind of what we were saying earlier. I have no idea what's going to come through the door. It's so wildly diverse.
Mm-hmm.
I have like no. I don't have to like work in one niche, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. That's really good for my own brain.
Your own skills.
Yeah. It's
It
really
gets you,
fun.
it makes you sharp across all edges. You
Yeah.
can figure out, helps you learn what you do and don't
Totally.
like.
I love that even just like last week, there is like one day I'm recording a country band, the next it's a hip hop thing, the next it's a shoegaze. Like it's like so wildly different. It's a buffet of all my favorite things.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
That's great. That's what I'm
Super
talking
dope.
about.
Yeah.
It's a bad idea to be like, no, I don't want to record that. I only
Yeah.
want to stick to indie rock.
Yeah.
It's like,
But I also know my limitations.
yeah.
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 Like
You know
if
what
I-
record you did I liked a lot was the Grow K one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Oh man,
I remember
new,
that show. I went
Their
to that show. You
new
were
stuff
there.
is so good.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
Great
Kathy's
singer.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's a man. I've known Kathy for a while now, and yeah, when I first met her, she was so young. I mean, she's still so young, right? She's only 21, I think.
Oh, wow.
But when I met her, I'm pretty sure she was only 19 years old.
Okay.
And like I had so much fun working with her on her records because it was like in that middle age where it's like, God, if I was this age, this is what I wish someone would tell me.
Mm-hmm.
Or like if I had like, it's crazy that she was that age and was like, I'm gonna go into a studio. Like I was
Yeah.
19, I'm like, how do I tune my guitar again?
Yeah.
not that extreme, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I have such respect for her and her band.
Yeah.
They're amazing, like really easy to record and work with, and like great of like really flushing out ideas, especially when it comes to the mixing, you know? So yeah, her newest stuff is so cool because I think that record that you heard, she'd already like recorded, had like a good solid idea. And then between that and her EP that's already done, I don't know what's coming out, but we had a lot of talk about like just music where I was like, you should listen to this. And I was like, you should listen. And she was doing the same thing for me. She was like, you should listen to this. And we were sharing music together.
Yeah.
And I could tell when she brought in these new songs, it totally made her way into her influence of these songs.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. And it was really, again, I was talking about like, you know, trying to find I hate to say this, but like trying to find your voice.
Yeah.
That's really important. You know, your thumbprint. It's like, don't copy it. Just find something that is uniquely you. And I feel like she found it in such a cool way. It's like this blend of a lot of things. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of her. She's such a hard worker too. So
It is cool to see like really young up and coming artists,
Totally.
musicians just like going for it.
I get so stoked when I get to record someone who is like under 21 because they are kind of a clean slate. They're not jaded yet.
Yeah. They're so happy.
They're so stoked.
They want to do, yes, I was going to do it.
And it's also great because it keeps me in touch with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting older, and like my tastes are kind of like they swivel in and out of things, and like they come in and they show me something like, oh my God, I never heard of this.
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah,
No, you gotta stay relevant in this world.
Yeah,
especially in the arts.
You have to.
I don't want to be that old guy.
I don't either.
Things aren't what they used to be. It's like
maybe we made real music in my day.
Yeah, everyone's been saying that forever.
Totally.
So like, be who you are. You're 33.
Yeah.
You grew up where you grew up. Learn from it, and then like sway on both sides. Learn from older people. Talk to them.
Totally.
What do they go through? Why are they the way they are? And then learn from the.
And here's my
kids
second
too.
take on that: is that people who are like, okay, like I can just honestly say this: that Girl K record, right? People who listen to that album are around their age. They are so hardcore and enthusiastic about buying records and listening to them. They care so much. I mean, you remember when you're that age? Remember how much you cared about it?
Yeah.
Like, it was a whole different level of, like, obsession.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I want to know their names. I want to know where they grew up. I want to know what brand of guitar they play.
Yeah.
I want to know what kind of sticks the drummer used. I want to know everything.
They didn't lose it yet.
Yeah.
That pizzazz. They still believe in Santa Claus.
They love it. And they're so stoked to see their friend playing on stage. And, like, they're just so caring. And I'm not going to lie, compare that to a band who's in their 30s and they play at the Empty Bottle. Usually it's just a bunch of guys like crossing their arms, just like nodding their head and like, yeah, it was all right.
Yeah, drink their IPA.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, and that's okay too. But yeah, like the enthusiasm of that age.
I haven't lost it. I lost some of it.
Yeah.
Because you do. I can't lie to myself. But I'm happy that I feel like I still have a lot of it.
Yeah.
And it's probably because I surround myself with all age people.
Exactly.
I have friends from 18 to 70.
Yep.
You know, I have friends from across the board, but I also get to stay relevant because of my students.
Yeah.
They'll still make fun of me.
Totally.
Like, I didn't know, like, Screamo, emo still is relevant. I had no idea because it's what I grew up listening to. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was just over with. Mm-hmm. And then, like, My Chemical Romance. And I was like, wait, what? Still? Yep. Huh. Yep. I had no idea. Totally. So, like, they always ground me. They make fun of me, but they ground me. And I get to see and hang out with 18, 19, 20-year-olds that are in sound all the time and seeing that click in their brain.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't, and you see them, they don't come back to those classes, they're out.
Yeah.
But then you see the ones that it's like really go into it, and then they go to the next level, then they go to a mixing and mastering, then they want to go to graduate school, and you see it, and you're like, it's so cool to see that spread. It's really nice to keep me grounded, relevant, you know?
Yep.
So working with young artists is fun that way, too.
It's super fun.
You know, the band yesterday was young, too. That
perspective that it's you can gain a lot of knowledge from. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And even like how to talk about music. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but like, it's like, you know, I feel like it's so silly that like people obsess over Gen Z, what's going on with Gen Z? You know what I mean? It's so funny to me. And like, and what's more hilarious that, you know, Gen Z is looking at us like, why are y'all so obsessed with us? Chill out. Like, we're actually just more chill than you. You know, you just can't figure that out. You guys are all have anxiety and we don't, you know, like we've kind of figured that out. And so it is great that, you know, someone who comes in the studio that just literally grew up with the internet, you know?
Yeah.
Having access to, which might kind of like inform like why like a younger generation might still be in like My Chemical Romance. Like we kind of like grew into an age where the internet hadn't quite taken off for music yet. Uh-huh. Like we still had to go in and like buy a CD. Yeah. At a young age, like junior high or something, you know? Mm-hmm. And even like we can talk about illegal downloading, but that stuff took forever. So it got through a little bit. You know what I mean?
Did a lot of that.
Yeah. So it's still music still like kind of came through the radio, right? Through these pipelines of like, here's what is popular. Here's what everybody's listening to. And everyone sort of shared that consciousness, if you want to say it. That's deep. But now it's all gone. It's all through the internet. It is all over the place. Like, someone who is maybe in their early 20s will come into the studio and be like, Doug, okay, I know you said you want to know what kind of record we want to make. Well, we want it to be like some psych band from the 60s, but we also want it to be like Nirvana, but we also want it to be like Charlie XCX. It's all over the place, you know? And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, I'm so confused. Yeah. Like, I have no idea what that means. Yeah. That is such a combination of like, you lost me, you know, but that's literally what it's like. It's just all genre, it's all decades. And now you have records, and I think this kind of makes sense now when you listen to, especially in like the indie rock realm, you have drums that sound like Fleetwood Mac, and you have guitars that sound like grunge, and you have vocals that sound like shoegaze. It's literally all the decades. So there's a mixture going on. And so that's why it's so important when I'm like, what kind of drum tone do you want? You know, what kind of guitar tone do you want? And talking about that. So, and you gotta be okay with that. Like, be flexible. These mashups of genres are so bizarre now that you kind of can't be like, hey man, what kind of music you play? Like, I'm in a rock band. You can't do that anymore.
No, you can't.
No, you gotta be like, you almost can't even like tell the genre. You almost have to be like, well, it's a combination of this band and this band, and then people kind of understand what you're talking about.
Absolutely,
more,
it's
right?
hard.
You literally can't be like, well, I'm in an indie rock band, but it's like a shoegaze thing, but it's also like this and this and this, and people are just like, yeah, okay, I think I know what you're talking about.
It depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to your parents, I just said,
oh yeah,
rock band. I'm
not even getting to my parents. Lord,
just in a rock band.
Me trying to describe my job to my parents is hilarious.
Me too.
So, yeah. No, that's a whole nother subject and topic. I'm just literally talking about even with bands.
What do they say that you do when they talk to like friends and family?
I don't know. I'm scared to even hear what they say, But I did once have my parents come into the studio and show them exactly what's going on. I had to, that was the only way I could like legitimize my job to them. Where I'm like, look at this is a console, and my dad is like, oh, be damned, like I can't believe that's old and that you actually press these buttons. I thought I have no idea what he thought, but like he just has no idea.
Yeah.
So that's the only way I could like really show them is to show them the studio.
Yeah.
And like kind of softly explain the process, but it's cool. They totally, especially my mom has always supported my like music obsession for sure. She put me in guitar lessons when I was really young.
Oh, that's good.
Like I was honestly like 8 years old when I started taking guitar lessons.
That's excellent. That's a great time to take them.
Yep. And so I had guitar teachers all the way up through high school.
So you've been playing since you were 6.
Yeah.
So 27 years.
So yep. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm not even like, I hate telling people that because they're like, all right, show me what you got. You've been playing for that long. I can't solo. I've never even been interested in soloing. I just love, I am the best rhythm guitar player for real though. I love rhythm guitar.
I don't fully understand soloing. Like I guess I solo.
I love it, but like I more want to give that to someone else. I love it. I wish I could like rip a Jimmy Page solo. I just can't do it.
I don't know.
But I can play you any meters.
Yeah.
So, I love rhythm guitar. I just love bashing away.
You're probably the best rhythm guitar player.
It was fun. I was obsessed with it. So obsessed with rhythm.
What kind of guitar do you play right now? What do you got? What are you rocking?
Let's see. What do I have right now? I've been playing my acoustic the most. Yeah, I've got this old 60s Gibson J45.
That's cool.
That I use a lot.
More of an acoustic person?
In and out.
That's probably the rhythm talking.
Yeah. I learned a lot of like, especially when I was in my early 20s, I started learning a lot of like, not even for performing, just for pure self fun. I learned a lot of like, country blues stuff, like Delta blues stuff.
Yeah.
I got really obsessed with it. I loved the racket of it and the raw and the intensity of it. Became really obsessed with Mississippi Fred McDowell. Obsessed with him. Incredible slide guitarist. Hound Dog Taylor, all that stuff that like really like brutally raw sounding blues music. And that was more punk to me than punk. So I obsessed over it.
Yeah.
I love the spirit of the energy of it.
Yeah.
And I still think that spirit of it goes into my recording process where like I love raw energy like that,
Yeah.
So yeah, because they were using, like really bizarre like Teisco guitars, like nothing fancy, and they made the best sounds out of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like your Silvertone amp you had down there, right?
Yeah.
That's the beautiful amp.
Yeah, and the Silvertone 1448.
It's great.
Guitar,
Yeah.
With the lipstick container.
I'm so obsessed with those like, what used to be cheap pawn shop guitars now, unfortunately.
Off-brand stuff.
Yeah, off-brand
generic stuff, yeah. Airline, K.
Yep.
Silvertone.
Yeah, I kind of really push against the boutique amp world and boutique anything. I kind of hate it.
Why do you kind of hate it?
Because clean doesn't mean good. Just true bypass does not mean good. Like I think it's just kind of like, I call it like the Joe Bonamassa mentality, right? Where it's like, I gotta have this like $2,000 amp. I got to have this blah, 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 a guitar just to be able to play. It's just not true. Like you don't need that stuff.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite musicians are people that play like total junk stuff, but their talent is insane. And it's shaped them to become a certain way that is like very unique to them. And I like that more. Yeah, I think especially right now, we're kind of like in a world where, or a style of guitar playing where guitars themselves are difficult. Like they're either too expensive or they're like so severely cheap and poorly made that they're like,
we are in that world.
It's like
very
weird.
Annoying. The dynamic is not close enough. It's you get really, really cheap stuff.
Yeah.
Or so expensive.
Yeah.
It's like that was $300 or $3,000.
Yeah.
And you're like, where's the middle ground?
Give me the $500 one.
Yeah, I want a 5 to 1,000. Right. That's a really good
spot for a build. And the bummer thing is that even like the vintage 80s stuff is now like expensive. So it's even hard to like use some of that stuff that used to be cheap even like 5 years ago and now is like very, very expensive. So I do think that's a little bit of a difficult thing to gather that gear. But yeah, I think a lot of times like I don't know, this is kind of my take on it, but like the pedal world especially is getting a little bonkers where it's like a delay is a delay is a delay at the end of the day. Like there are different delays, obviously. You know what I mean? But just be careful. Like I just don't think I got to be careful about saying this, right? I don't want to eat my words because I think that a lot of times people will bring in very expensive guitars, very expensive pedals, very expensive amps. And you can clearly tell that the process has been reversed where they're like, for me to be a better guitar player, I need this product instead of being like, oh, it's me. And then accentuating it by the pedals.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the guitar, like the Silvertone 1448 that I have downstairs. It's a 61.
That's the suitcase one.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, with the amp in the case. The
lipstick.
It's great.
See, I know all the lingo and stuff.
Brazilian rosewood. It's not even legal anymore. 3/4 size guitar, 18 frets. It plays like garbage.
Yeah. But it sounds awesome.
It sounds cool.
Oh,
I got it because
so
of Cat
good.
Power, one of my favorite singer-songwriters. That was her guitar. It inspired me to get it. So I've had it for 10 years. It's one of the worst guitars I've ever played.
Yeah.
Because I compared to my...
But don't you feel like, okay, but here's my thought on that. When I'm playing a guitar and it's like from that era, it's like, it's the fret action is wild.
Yeah.
And it goes out of tune, but that's why I love it. Exactly. Because I can bash away. I know it's going to go out of tune. I know that it's going to give me the sound that is so uniquely that sound and so raw. I hate to say that word, but like it's got unique sounds to it. And that is so much better than someone being like, okay, well, here's this guitar and it's going to cost you $3,000, but it can make every sound you want. And it's like, well, that's not the point. Yeah. And it plays like butter. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know.
How do you feel about the amp simulator pedals?
Yeah, that's okay. Per genre, I noticed that happens in metal with a lot. Everything else, no.
Yes.
Okay, here's a fun story. Right, I was recording this band, and they brought in these giant old vintage custom solid state amps.
Yeah,
like the Creedence Clearwater style amps. They're basically like PAs. They're loud. They're insanely loud. And the guitar player was hooking up. And he had that Soul Food pedal, which I hate the title of that pedal. Like Soul Food.
That's a bad name.
Oh, and so I'm just like, no, turn that off and just crank it. And he's dimed it out. You can do that in the studio.
Yeah.
And like he's just like, oh my God, that's insane. I'm like, and maybe it's because we all like grew up in apartments now or something like that. And we're worried about volume. We can't just crank. I grew up in the country and I sold my first cow when I was 13. And I used that money and I bought a freaking Marshall half stack, a JCM 900. And I had a half stack in my mom and dad's garage and I blasting it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so awesome.
I never heard the phrase in my life. I sold my first cow.
Truly.
And bought a
Marshall I was way younger
than
than that. I was in grade school. I was literally in 5th grade. Yeah.
How much money did you get for your first cow?
I don't know, but I can tell you exactly.
How does one sell a cow?
Okay, so when you're in 4-H, do you know what 4-H is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's an auction at the end. And typically why they do this is they let you sell your steer, right? Because you showed it as a bucket calf when it was the year prior, when it was a little teenager, essentially. And I would bottle feed it, everything. And then I would go home from school. I'd have to walk it around the house to train it how to walk.
Outside the house.
Outside the house,
Not
yeah.
around the house.
Right, yeah. Because they lived out in the barn.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would walk it down the road every night. So it became halter trained. It's really calm. And then you show it when it's an adult. And there's a whole process of doing that. And then at the end of the show season, you sell the cattle. And for what you think it is. Yes. They go to the market. And that was a very sad trauma inducing thing.
Sounds
for
like
sure.
there's a couple of them, huh?
Yeah, that was tough. That was rough. But the thing is, my parents, I mean, my mom specifically was like, okay, so why they have this is because it's supposed to go to your college fund. I can't remember how much a cow sells for. I think back then it was like $1,000.
Okay.
Right? That's a lot of money when you're a kid, though.
Absolutely.
Right? But what I didn't think about was my dad was fronting all the feed bills and stuff and medicine or whatever, So he did pay a lot of money that I didn't have to pay because I didn't have a job.
Yeah.
But they let me keep the money. And my mom said that she's like, you have a choice. Either you save this for college. Remind you, I'm in 4th grade.
Yeah.
Okay. So you know what my answer is going to be. Yeah. And they said, or you can use it towards something you really want. And of course, I'm like, I want an amp. Heck yeah,
Yeah.
So this is, I can't remember what year this is. I don't even want to do the math right now, but this is like when like eBay first started. Mm-hmm. And I got on my mom's account on eBay and I totally bought a Marshall half stack up in Hoffman Estates.
Oh, not far from here.
So my mom, we got in the minivan. My mom drove me all the way up to Hoffman Estates, like 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And here comes this little, I could see how old are you when you're in like 5th grade?
Oh, 10, 11.
Yeah. Here comes this little 10 or 11-year-old knock on this guy's door with cash in my hand. It's like, hey, sir, I'm the guy who bought your Marshall half stack. And he like just looks down. He's like, what?
Tube amp and everything?
Tube amp.
That's
a JCM 900.
That's
you know
awesome.
why I got a JCM 900? Because that's the amp they use in Dookie.
Yeah.
And that's the album I was obsessed with at that age.
That's a good price. But it was back then, so.
Exactly.
Now
it was
be
back
way
then.
More.
Yep. And so.
Do you still have it?
I don't.
Why?
Yeah, because
You traded it for a cow.
I traded it I was like, actually, I like the cow. No, I sold it and I got an orange half stack. I kept, and this is where it all starts for Doug and his gear obsession is I bought that amp at such a cheap price, kept it for like 5 years, and it was my touring. I toured even when I was in high school. I had that amp. I bought an orange amp. I sold it, used that money, got an orange amp. Sold that. I just kept selling.
High watt.
Trading up.
Did you get a high watt?
No, I never got a high watt. That is one of my favorite amps ever, though.
I thought you would have went Marshall orange high watt.
Yeah, right. No, but this is where I start to turn and I get the Gibson acoustic. Yeah. And then this is where I turn and then it's like, let's see, this is like probably like my first year of community college. That's when I start recording bands and that's where I start buying recording gear. So that's where it started. Just some microphones and stuff. I had one of those really bizarre like Tascam, the 2488, where it was like way too many channels and it's all digital, no computer, and then you burn the CD at the bottom. Mm-hmm. That's how I was like recording my own music and recording my friends' bands.
Yeah.
So silly.
It's awesome. I mean, you got to start somewhere. I started with a cassette player.
Yeah. I didn't even start with cassette.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Went straight to CD. I did cassette.
I went straight to
the
CD.
Tascam 8-track.
Everyone when they like, Doug, or they ask any engineer, like, what was your first situation? They always like to give this reply where it's like, oh yeah, it was like this cassette deck or this like tape machine. No, never did it. I went straight to digital.
That's so funny. I did cassette straight to digital.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, maybe you could make an argument that I did have a tape experience because of my Fisher Price, a little mini micro cassette, me just like making, police siren sounds into it and recording and hearing that back. I mean, maybe that's my first,
It is
studio
a fun experience when you don't know what you're doing, and
totally.
but you want to record.
Yeah.
You have no idea how anything works.
Totally.
You have no idea what anything is. A microphone.
And reading the manual just seems so daunting and lame.
Yeah. You just wing it. Things are bad. They're distorted. That's how you learn, though.
Totally.
And then when you go to school and you can couple like your musical skills, the messing around with the gear tinkering for years, and then the actual real education for people in the field and the actual science and art behind it, it's like creates, and then you throw in the experience with, doing the studio and the internship. It's like, it all comes together and you have such a wide palette for understanding all of it.
Totally.
I
am not cool. I'm not that engineer that came up through analog anything. I actually started recording to tape probably like 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I have an old
you have a
Scully.
tape machine there. Yeah.
Yeah, and that thing came from Muscle Shoals, which is super cool.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a total vibe machine. And
that's so awesome.
Yeah, I've never used a Studer. I've never used an Atari. I've never used any other tape machine.
Is it 2-inch?
It's a 1-inch, 8-track. I love that thing.
How often do you use it?
Probably like twice a month.
Twice a month?
Yeah.
I always wanted to get a 16, 24 channel 2-inch, but it's so expensive.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, it's
the maintenance
sometimes
is rough.
Yeah, it's getting harder too.
Yeah.
The more we progress in the digital,
yeah,
the more that's not feasible.
Yeah. But I love it. It's fun. And you know, I actually don't even like obsess over the sheer sound. I just love what it does to the mindset of a band to record on tape.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, you really have to like have a talk with them. Sometimes I'll pull it from them where they're like, we want to record the tape. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you guys are not tape ready. That's just not, it's not going to happen. Like, you know, because it's like to record the tape, you have to make sure that one, we have the patience for setup time and everything. But two, you have to make sure that your performance is good because it is on there. And it's like, it's so funny. You explain all that and you explain everything, the steps and everything. And still when it gets to mixing, like, can you, and I'm like, no, I can't. Like, how you hit that snare is how you hit that snare.
Yeah.
Or I should say more like a tom mic, right?
Yeah.
Because it's only 8 tracks, mine is. So the one record I did, band Cafe Racer.
Oh, I know them.
Yeah, that last band. They're a big sounding band, right? Huge. And all of the basic tracks, we're talking 3 guitars, bass, and a full drum set. That is on 8 tracks.
How did you do that?
Just going for it. And
like,
making
how did
sure,
you fit it all in there? Like, what was the layout?
I had, so the console's 24 channels, and it has 8 group outs.
Okay.
So I can group all my, right, my good friend Elise is the drummer in that band, and she used a full kit, and there's multiple mics, and I just have to group them.
So you get them mixed properly on the board, and then group them.
That's all you can do. 4 channels on tape. So literally, channel 1 was room left and tom, whatever. Channel 2 is room right and tom, whatever.
Yeah.
Channel 3 and 4 is kick and snare.
Yeah.
And that's just going for it.
That's cool.
It's wild.
It's punk rock.
Yeah, it's so punk rock. and it's crazy. Oh, another band. There's a band called Spread Joy. They're pretty new. We did everything live to tape, even vocals. And that was so awesome.
Ooh, in that room?
In that room, yeah.
What's it sound like with the the
Well, I stuck the vocals in the ISO room.
Oh, okay.
So everything else was live though, amps, everything. And I just literally placed her microphone right into the Space Echo, out of the Space Echo, straight in the tape machine. And I love the sound of that album. Because, so here's my case for it, is that they are a confident band that has rehearsed. They know exactly what they want to do.
Yeah.
That's step 1. And 2, because of that rehearsal, they then they know setting up microphones, but it's minimal miking, right? Because you only have 8 tracks. So because of that, the drummer will come in and hear it off the tape, and they're like, okay, I know now how I need to hit the snare drum or how to hit they then respond to that sound. And it's beautiful. And I wish bands would do that anyway, even though they know it's digital. It's like they should really kind of like, when they come in for like to see if the tracks are sounding good or the miking and everything is good, they should really listen and be like, oh wow, like my cymbals are just crazy washing. Why is it so loud? And that's why I usually kind of turn the drummer. I was like, well, because you're just smacking the living daylights out of it, you know? Maybe like chill, you know, and then balance it out. And when they balance themselves out, they come back and like, oh, it's great. I'm so glad that conversation happened, you know? So
yeah, that's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
It's
that whole Glenn Johns story. You know?
Yeah.
Where he's just like, can't hit the snare. It's like, well, hit it harder, you know?
Yeah.
Can't hit the cymbals, or cymbals are too loud. Don't hit it as hard. You know, it's the same process. So that's why tape is so fun, because it's like, it really makes me a better engineer, because I know going in it has to be like so good. And it makes the band a better band, because they also know that this stuff is like grouped out. It's on the tape. And this tape machine is so old, you cannot do punch-ins. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you have to do it. Everybody has to do it right.
Wow.
And
that's
so
cool.
When you give that pressure on the band, they're like, oh yeah, okay. So they're like just stoked. And they do. They perform it better. And it's because I given them that mindset to do it.
Yeah. How long does the 1-inch tape last? Like, how long does it really last?
Well, it runs by either, which is just another thing, it runs in either 15 or 30 IPS.
Yeah.
Which is, wow, 30, right?
Yeah.
And so if it's 30, it's flying.
For those listening, inches per second?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's 30, it kind of shaves off some of the low end. So if I'm doing a country record, I'll do it in 30, because I don't need that sub bass. I don't want the top end to open up. So I'll run it in 30, and I have to really watch it, because it will fly through. I should also mention a lot of times I'm doing tape, it's being dumped into Pro Tools post everything.
Yeah.
So it's still...
You get some control.
Yeah, some control, and it also is getting the color archived like that.
It's funny you said that, the 30 low end. That's 30 kind of came in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And that's why production changed so much then. A lot of low end was gone, but you get that more clarity and
the top
transparency.
end is just... Pew.
And for those listening, that is, they went from 15 inches per second, doubling it to 30.
Yep.
And you got more high end, but you lost a little bit of low end.
Right.
And that's why that, what would you say, like 78, 77?
Probably only like 75.
75. You could tell.
Yeah,
you listen to records, you're like, something's different.
Yeah.
It's also the technology got better, preamps, EQs.
New tape machines.
Gear, all your engineers weren't just like electrical engineers anymore. By that point, they were actually people who had 15, 20 years of experience.
Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right.
So, yeah, because of that, you got a completely different sound.
Totally.
It's really wild how technology shapes the industry, and then CDs came in and you
Still
got
does.
More. Still does.
Yeah.
Look at Spotify.
Yeah. I mean, look, even more so, look at Ableton, I think is a really good conversation, right? That, here's a program that you don't have to know diddly squat about how to play an instrument, and you can just pencil this in and do virtually anything you want.
Yep.
If you take the time to learn how to like MIDI map things and, you can make a whole arrangement, a whole band. I mean, it takes time, and it's, in my opinion, not as fun. But, if you're doing electronic music, it's amazing. And so, and you have all these effects, and you learn about effects quickly and what they do, and what they, you learn like there's not just a delay, there's a ping pong delay, there's a spatial, delay, all these things, right? Like you don't just learn. It's not. We've gone out of like basic boss pedal world to like this intense, palette.
Yeah.
Now the flip side of that is that you got to be careful because again with the guitar thing, it's like you don't want to get. You want to make sure your songwriting is in check first before you get into the flowery effects. And so you make sure the songs are good. And I do kind of have this feeling that I could be wrong, but in my senses, I think that like it's been reversed a little bit. Where again, the bands might bring in a song and they're like, all these effects and everything. I'm like, yeah, but the song just isn't like there.
It's not hitting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not hitting. So we need to like scrap all that and get to the bare bones. And sometimes that makes bands really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's almost like a slight at their creativity,
Yeah, you just don't want any like cop-outs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that like that structure is there. And that's another part of my own work that I do. I think a lot of times I'll hear them start a take and then I'll come out and be like, what do you feel about this? What if we like don't, that part's too long? Or maybe like switch this or, some kind of suggestion.
Yeah.
So I will always give my feedback immediately. If it's like a really intense thing, I will not do it with the talk back. I'll walk out and we'll talk, But if it's like a little thing, I'll just like talk it through the talk back and just try to get something new just to show them, you know what I mean? So that happens quite often. But yeah, it's interesting. Technology is crazy in that, like, especially with Ableton, it's nuts. I don't use Ableton as often as I should probably, but I'm trying to still learn it more. But yeah, I mean, it has like the whole Max for Live stuff. Like the possibilities are just stupid.
Yeah.
But you do have to question it though, right? It's always defaults to 4/4 time. It makes you write a certain way if you don't be careful. So it's good to like recognize that and know when to turn the grid off and know when to turn it on, right?
Yeah.
With anything.
Yeah.
And signal flow.
I love that. I still want to get that. Was Signal Flow is Life?
Yeah, truly.
That's such a good one. That's a good tattoo.
Yeah, it's a good tattoo.
Man. Any do you have any future endeavors that you're working on? Trying like anything with the studio, any branching out, any
like me teach?
You?
No, what say that again? Teacher endeavors.
Any future endeavors.
Oh, future, I'm sorry. I think it's just right now in this point where this sounds silly, but like I'm actually this year is the first time I've actually felt like the studio is mine, right? Because I bought it from Benjamin, the previous owner. And I respect him so much. I was always like, just don't mess with anything up. You're going to ruin the vibe of this place. You're just going to ruin the place if you change anything. Yeah. Even the damn toilet paper roll in the bathroom. Don't change anything. It's just going to ruin the vibe,
Yeah.
Because I respect his opinion so much. So it was so intense to me. But this year I've finally started to like put in things that I feel like in my own aesthetics that I like. So I finally feel like it's becoming my studio, which is a weird thing to think about. Like I pay the bills, obviously it's my, but like it's different where I'm like, I feel like I'm starting to like make it my own. You know, like I walk in, I'm like, I did that, you know, or I don't know. That sounds silly, but
Yeah.
So the endeavors is really, so that's a small goal is doing like little cosmetic things. I'm building out, actually used to be my old mix room, but I'm putting this big sliding glass door to have a future larger secondary ISO booth where I'm going to put like the organ, the B3 organ and some stuff. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of a big deal to me. I don't know, because it's a visual change up even, you know? But I think the big goal for me this year is I love Chicago. I love all the bands Chicago, but I don't want to record on Chicago bands. I just don't. I really love recording bands on tour. I think it's a really cool privilege to be able to do that, as you know.
Yeah.
Right?
I love when a band comes in
So
for a session
cool.
out of state, out of country.
So what I'm trying to do is actually kind of build the studio more friendly for people who are maybe like playing a show and maybe they have the next 2 days off. Not only can they come in and record at the studio, but like I have a good environment for them to sleep there and stay there in a shower and all that. So they can actually like, you know, bunk up there.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and my kind of thought process is like, I'll charge the rate I charge, but they're getting the stay. They don't have to get an Airbnb.
Yeah.
You know, they can stay there.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So,
I do, yeah.
So that's actually going to be a huge focus because actually before the pandemic and during the pandemic, we're still during it, but I did get to record a lot of bands from like Minneapolis and all over there. And like I had so much fun because it was nice to have somebody from a different perspective, like you said earlier, from a different town and everything, and like hear how they talk about the music scene and stuff and what goes on with them. And also just like not having any kind of idea of like stature. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
I kind of get a clean slate where it's like I don't have any idea what goes on in that city with them, nor they're like how big they are. I know nothing. I guess just like take them as a band. It's like I'm not close, you know. So it's like a totally different, clean slate. For me.
They're completely detached from you. Yeah.
So I do love that. So that's a short answer, but that turned into a long answer.
No,
that's my goals.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start. I mean, I like that. Even like when I got to go film there.
Yeah.
That was really fun too. I think I did it twice. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Those bands are awesome.
Yeah.
And it's a fun collaboration. I've only filmed in other people's studios, I guess yours. Yeah. I mean, I go and film at this barn all the time, but it's not a full studio. I bring my gear there, but yours is like complete attached. You do the audio, I did the video.
Right.
That was fun.
Super fun.
Yeah, I want to do
super
more of
chill.
that stuff.
Goes back to the whole thing of like college friends. We know that we're both professionals.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, great. Is a professional and a homie. This is going to go so well.
Yeah.
Like,
you do your thing, I'm doing mine. Meet in the middle.
This is truly how all this works.
Yeah.
Like I invite drummers on the sessions that I've like worked with before that I know. It's just how this all functions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and everybody wins.
You make money off your friends.
Make money off your friends.
Single flows life.
Your friends make money off you. Everybody wins.
Sell your first cow.
Selling cows. I need to get back into that actually. Side gig. I gotta call my parents.
That's hysterical.
Yeah. So.
Oh, wow. I think
we talked so much.
3 hours.
Oh yeah.
Did you know that?
No.
You had no
I
idea.
told you I didn't even look. I was like, I can chat forever.
Yeah. 3 hours. It just goes.
I know. I love it.
Man.
It's like a recording session. Yeah, man. Let's wrap her up.
Let's wrap it up. 3 hours. We just watched the Titanic here. Anything you want to plug? Any websites, social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you name it?
Man, I mean, you know, I will tell you that the studio website is still being worked on. So I could tell you to go there, but it just has my email. And a cool picture of the console, I guess. But no, I think that, you know, to people listening to it, I think this is the year coming, you know, after everything that's happened, this is the year I think we really, really need to be very mindful about buying music from bands, from the artists, of any art. Like, like if you use Spotify, cool, whatever, but use that almost as like a paint sample.
Yeah.
You know, like you went to Home Depot and you got a paint sample. That's not the paint. Like go buy the record from the band.
Yeah.
Because every band I'm working with, it's really hard right now.
Yeah.
Because Spotify isn't doing squat. And that affects my job. That affects everybody.
Yeah.
And I think now if like no different than like talking about like, ethics and eating food or something. It's the same thing of buying into music, buying anything. It's really good to support that band in any way possible. That's through them. Like hell, message them on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like they will help you, or tell you how to get their stuff or whatever. Yeah. Even if you're like, your record is $20 and I only have 15, I guarantee you they're like, sick.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Buy their vinyl to listen to at home.
Yeah.
To support them, and then listen to them on Spotify when you go in your car.
Yeah, totally.
That's what I do.
It's just all that direct contact. Yeah. You know what I mean? And social media makes that so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's
a good idea.
That's my sort of
good advice.
recommend, especially after all that's gone through. You know what I mean?
And go to shows. Now that things are coming back.
Yep.
People are being vaccinated. Things are opening up. Support shows.
And talk to the band.
Talk to them.
Yeah. Just tell them like, hey, I liked your show.
Yeah.
As corny as that feels, they love that.
Yeah.
They really do.
They haven't heard it in
and it's not because they're egotistical.
15 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Totally. And this is all, we're all going to come out of this like it's going to be weird for a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're not going to be the same.
No.
In any way possible. Mm-mm. So I think we really need to like, I don't mean to be extreme about it, but I think we really need to reconsider social media practices. We need to reconsider human to human contact practices. We need to like straight up call a person and be like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? Not text. We need to like, we need to like get back to like the 90s, baby.
90s. We're both 90s
Internet's
kids.
great. I'm not anti-internet. I'm not anti-technology. I do think that we need to get back into like, get off social media for a minute, take a break and stop thinking about it in those terms of your status or how you're functioning in life. It's hard and it's really literally making everyone depressed.
Yeah.
And I think it's utter bullshit. So I think we really need to get back to like friends and like hanging out.
I like that.
Like person to person.
We should hang out.
Yes, we should. And we will. And I will call you.
Call me.
Right.
Call me.
Right.
And then I'll respond with a text like, check me out on Instagram. We'll go from there. No kidding.
Yeah. Like, but like, you know what I mean? Like move past the whole like tagging friend. No one needs to know where you are.
Yeah.
We don't care, actually. We don't care who you're hanging out with. Just be in them, be present.
Be present.
Okay, that's it.
I like it. It's good.
Right? Yeah, that's it.
Good.
That's a good ending note.
That's such a positive note.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. We'll do it. It'll get there. I think we've like been through some stuff. So
it's been heavy.
Yeah, I think we really all miss each other.
Yeah.
We really do.
I miss so many people I've seen because of this.
Yeah. So on that note, it's so good to be with you.
Yeah.
In person.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
This has been
right.
I love it.
It's the facial cues, everything, the body motion.
Everything. Thanks for coming down here.
Dude, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me here.
I appreciate it. It was a pleasure to see you again, to hear your story. Jamdek's great. I love the studio being there, knowing bands that have been there. It's awesome. Keep doing it.
Man. You too. I'm glad that we get to experience this as like old college buds too.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's cool to see us just doing the things.
Totally. It is. Truly.
It's awesome.
It's like, we're just cheerleading each other on. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, take care.
You too, man. Thank you.